So guys, what if Naruto was slept for 1000 years and woke up in the high school universe special movie? Hi Uzumaki. All the boys looked at him, nobody liked him, he was the only one who could talk to her normally, he was also the only one who was greeted by her. Naruto just raised a hand and ignored all the looks as usual, he really had no nerve for it, he just wanted to go home so he could sleep, there he could dream of his old life again. In his dreams he lived his real life and not in this world that wasn't his world. Why did he have to fall into that portal? Why couldn't he just have died and been reunited with both of his parents? He actually thought that by defeating Kaguya, he had finally done his duty and he could finally have a good life. After all, he had proved himself more than once, but as usual, his life had nothing but shit left for him. The girl sat down at the table in front of Naruto and grabbed her things from her bag. Yuki was a beautiful young woman with a slim yet endowed build with a far more notable big butt. She had light blue, shoulder-length hair that had a longer portion of her hair put into a braid on the left side of her face tied into a single braid, as well as a single long skein of hair, also known in Japan as ahoge, and yellow eyes. Most of the time, she was seen dressed in the uniform of her school, which resembled a white sailor uniform that had a black collar and black cuffs that had white horizontal stripes, an orange-colored tie hanging from the edges of her collar, a short black skirt that had a single white stripe, long black socks that had a white stripe around her calves and maroon-colored shoes. Her face rarely showed emotion, she was the most popular girl at school, along with another girl. There was one other person, but this person wasn't a student. All the people just didn't understand why Yuki Nonaka greeted her classmate at all. After all, he was lazy and did next to nothing in class, he was the worst in the entire school, he hardly did anything and often fell asleep in class, he didn't care, he always passed all the exams with the fewest points not to fail. It was as if he was doing this on purpose, but that didn't matter to anyone. Naruto didn't care what other people thought of him, he just wanted to sleep so he could finally continue the mission that was interrupted by his alarm clock this morning. Naruto frowned as the only boy who didn't hate Naruto walked up to him. Every boy hated him because Yuki often ate with him during the break or because the other girl was around him during the break. You look like a zombie, Naruto. Ever since Naruto woke up in this world and learned everything here, his eyes had become lifeless. His blue eyes had no more life in them, his eyes looked like the eyes of a doll. He had hoped not to have any special abilities in this new world so that he could die quickly. After all, there were more than just normal humans around here, be it fallen angels, devils, yokai, angels or other supernatural beings, there were even heroes in this world. He couldn't just run into his own death because of a promise to his parents. He had promised his father when he left after the fight against Kaguya that he would not die pointlessly. Had he known that after the fight with Kaguya he would end up in this world, he would never have made that promise. But that's the way it was. Naruto Uzumaki never broke a promise, he would not break his basic principles even in this world. Even if he wasn't the same anymore, he had calmed down, he no longer felt joy, he had just lost everything and as a result he just wanted to die so he could be reunited with his friends in the afterlife. What's the matter, Takagawa? I really wonder how you manage that, Naruto. You don't do anything and yet you are always surrounded by beautiful girls. Under the guise of Yujiro, he appeared to be just a normal high school student dressed in the same school uniform as every other male student. Ihigazaka Academy's male school uniform consisting of a black blazer, dress shirt, trousers, and shoes. He had green hair that appeared to be a little slick in the back with strands of his hair showing off his forehead and purple-colored eyes. Naruto frowned. What do I know? Yujiro laughs a little. That's really mean, Naruto. Can't you give me some of your happiness? Get lost. Yuki looked over her shoulder and briefly observed how the two were talking. Naruto seemed annoyed and as usual his blue eyes were lifeless. Be happy. I am the only boy who doesn't want to kill you. Yujiro laughed a little and Naruto frowned. He really was a shadow of his old self. He had become exactly what he had hated back then. Instead of thanking the goddess who had helped him gain a foothold in this world, he hadn't said anything. Only through the goddess was Naruto able to get by in this world quickly and safely without attracting too much attention. She found him when he fell through the portal and appeared in this world. He had triggered a massive explosion in the process and created a massive crater. It was also she who had healed him in the beginning, namely, he had severe injuries from dimensional travel between two dimensions, which should never have been connected. In the end he accepted everything and even trained his new skills so that he could survive, otherwise, he would not have been able to keep his promise to his parents. But even after all the help he got from this goddess, he hadn't said thank you, he had just frowned and accepted everything and set out to get by in this world. You just want to be near me so you can get closer to Nonaka and Naruse. You break my heart. I am your friend Naruto. Naruto looked into Yuhiro's purple eyes and stayed silent for a moment. He saw Yuki watching him out of the corner of his eye. Her yellow eyes met Naruto's blue eyes. Is anything Nonaka? Yujiro looked at Yuki in surprise. He smiled slightly nervously because Yuki was looking straight in his direction. However, he looked downright dejected when he realized that she was just looking at Naruto and simply ignored him. You're talkative today. What about it? The whole class looked at Naruto and Yuki. You should speak more often. Why should I? Yuki stayed silent for a moment and looked at Naruto with her stoic face. Her yellow eyes stared straight at him, as if she were looking into his soul. Your voice seems more alive. Naruto's eyes widened for a second, but only for a second. He hadn't even noticed that emotions could be heard in his voice again. He frowned and cursed inwardly. Whatever. Naruto looked out the window and watched the cherry tree in the schoolyard again. Yujiro sighed. I am so jealous of you, Narukai. Nonaka is completely ignoring me here and you're not even cheering me up. Naruto looked at Yujiro. You really want me to say something about that? Yujiro gave him a hurt look. You are so mean, Narukai. I do everything so that you can laugh. Why should I laugh? You seem like a living corpse. Before the conversation could continue, Mio Naruse walked into the classroom, along with Yuki Nonaka. She was the most popular girl at school. Mio was a beautiful young woman shorter than Naruto with long crimson hair reaching her waist and pink eyes. For someone her age, she had been noted for having a distinctly slender yet curvaceous figure with enormous, bouncy breasts and sizable buttocks. Most of the time, she was seen dressed in the uniform of her school, which resembled a white sailor uniform that had a black collar and black cuffs that had white horizontal stripes, an orange-colored tie hang from the edges of her collar, a short black skirt that had a single white stripe, long black socks that had a red-colored ribbon around her upper thigh, and a pair of maroon-colored shoes. The entire class now focused on Mio and no longer on Naruto. He sighed and was glad that he was at peace. Even Yujiro went back to his seat and joined the other boys in marveling at Mio as she walked through the classroom and then sat down in her seat. Only Yuki watched Naruto for a while before she looked ahead again. Shortly after Mio came into the classroom, the teacher came in too. Naruto looked out the window and ignored the class. He wasn't thinking of anything in particular and just let his mind wander. Whether it was his old life or a few lessons from the goddess, he owed his new life. He thought about this and that while the teacher was doing the lesson. During the break, Naruto walked through the corridors of Ihigazaka Academy. He was on his way to the roof. There he was mostly in peace, of course. Yujiro always followed him there. From Yujiro, Naruto had learned how to open the roof door even though it was locked. So far, Yujiro was nowhere to be seen. This was mostly the case. He usually only showed up after Naruto had already gotten the door open. He passed several students heading towards the schoolyard or cafeteria. Some looked at him. Mostly it was boys who stared at him with envy. But many did not dare to speak to him directly or to threaten him. Naruto had a certain reputation. It wasn't particularly positive. Naruto always ignored those looks and just continued down the corridor. He only had to go around the next corner and then he would finally be on the stairs leading to the roof. But before he could get there, an attractive woman walked around the corner. Naruto stopped. This was the person who helped him get a foothold in this world. This woman was even more popular than Mio Naruse or Yuki Nonaka. Chisato was a stunningly attractive woman with sexy hip-length black hair that had bangs hanging on the right side with two hogues. Green eyes, a mole under her left eye, red round glasses, one earring on her left ear and a voluptuous figure. She had very large breasts, being even larger than Mio Narise's, and her butt was bigger than Yuki Nonaka's. Her work outfit consisted of a green knitted turtleneck, a tight black miniskirt along with her cross-garter motif stockings, and her signature white lab coat. Uzumaki. Naruto bowed and looked the nurse straight in the eye. He could already sense that Chisato would be around the corner. Through senjutsu in this world, he could sense the auras of others even at a great distance. Ms. Hasegawa, follow me, Uzumaki. Naruto just went after her. A lot of guys adored Chisato Hasegawa. She was very popular with boys and girls because of her looks and her personality. Even Yujiro wanted something from Chisato. After a short time, Naruto was alone with Chisato in the hospital room. He just looked at her while she sorted through some documents. When she was done, she turned to Naruto and looked at him. Her face rarely showed other emotions. She had the same facial expression 90% of the time. I have a request. Naruto raised an eyebrow. So far, Chisato had never asked him for anything. It was strange. This woman was weird. He was now able to assess many people or other beings well, but he couldn't interpret this woman, alone, what she had done for him without expecting anything in return. She had saved him. She had taught him how to use his new powers and what other races besides humans existed. She taught him so much and, in the end, she even gave him his own house, which he now lived inside. The house was big enough for a whole family. Naruto never understood why this woman had saved him in the first place and why she had helped him. She was a goddess after all, and from her point of view he would have to be complete scum. He had accumulated enough sins in his old life to rot in hell forever. Just how many shinobi he had killed in his lifetime. Then of course there was all the lying, the robbing and all the other stuff you did as a shinobi. But she had only given him a smile at the beginning and then helped him until he could manage on his own. It was weird. What can I do for you? Naruto would rather not do anything for anyone else, but this woman or goddess had given him so much, he had to do a lot to be able to fully pay off his debts. Smile once. Naruto raised an eyebrow. I don't understand? Smile once. Naruto gave her a sideways look, trying to understand why she was doing this. He hadn't even smiled since he came into this world. He always had a stoic face, or you could see him frowning. You must be able to smile for my request. Chisato looked at Naruto and crossed her arms under her large breasts. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. He tried to remember. He barely knew how to smile properly. In his dreams he could always laugh and smile, but in this world his body didn't seem to know how to smile properly. He paused as he felt his heart pounding again. Naruto opened his eyes and saw Chisato still looking at him and not saying anything. Naruto closed his eyes again. He frowned. The more he tried to remember, the more his heart pounded. He owed it to Chisato. He didn't want to, but he had to do it. His parents would never forgive him if he didn't pay back his debts. He didn't want to imagine what his mother would say to him if he ever saw her again and she found out about it. Naruto opened his eyes and smiled slightly. It was so faint you could almost miss it. Chisato took a good look at his face before 2 minutes later she just nodded. The smile was non-existent and not worth mentioning. Others might not even notice the smile. Follow me after school. Naruto raised an eyebrow and his stoic face reappeared. His smile faded and he gave Chisato a sideways look. Why should I follow you? I thought you had already shown me everything. You'll understand soon enough. Naruto really didn't know what he was doing here. He was standing in front of a restaurant waiting for Chisato Hasegawa. Since a few students were injured towards the end of school, Chisato still had to take care of these students. She had texted Naruto the place to wait for her. Naruto brought his hand to his mouth and took something between his lips. He tugged at the object once and then took the object away from his mouth. He blew some smoke out into the world and sighed a little. Although he wasn't yet 18 years old, no one would consider him too young to smoke. He had started it when he remembered Asuma. At that time, he had asked Asuma why he smoked at all. After all, smoking wasn't very healthy and eventually the cigarettes would kill him. It was pretty interesting. Back then, Naruto didn't find the explanation particularly exciting, but now he could understand him well. He started smoking for exactly the same reasons. He didn't smoke while he was at school, of course, but outside of school, Naruto smoked normally, like many other people in this world. Although he wore a school uniform, no one would think he was too young. He looked older than he actually was. Naruto looked at his phone, hoping for a new text message from Chisato. He had no one on his phone except Chisato. He only used the phone to keep in touch with her. Although it was always her who answered, he sighed when he saw how no new text message from Chisato had arrived. He drew on the cigarette again and then blew the smoke out into the world. He looked up at the sky and watched the clouds gliding calmly over Tokyo. This was one of the few hobbies he had in this world. During the break, on the way home or generally when he wasn't sleeping, he liked to look at the clouds. He stood there for another half hour until his cell phone suddenly vibrated. Naruto blew the smoke out into the world and then pulled his phone out of his pocket. He unlocked it and read the text message Chisato had sent him. He frowned and then walked away. It looks like that won't happen today. Chisato had informed him via SMS that she couldn't today. Something had come up and that's why they would postpone the meeting until tomorrow. He just shrugged his shoulders and started to go but stopped. He could see how all the people around him suddenly disappeared. He narrowed his eyes as the sky changed. Several dark colors danced across the sky, with purple, blue and black being the most dominant. That aura belongs to a fallen angel, thought Naruto. The barrier just happened to have locked him in as well. It was not specifically built around him. This barrier was put up because of someone else. He went off and tried to find the edge of the barrier. He wanted nothing to do with whatever was going on in that barrier. The barrier had transported this room to another dimension and because of that Naruto couldn't get out of here that easily. He just wanted to get to the edge of the barrier so no one would see him. He could, of course, break out of the barrier, but that would cause quite a stir. Everyone in the barrier could then sense that they were there. At the moment no one could feel him because he was hiding his aura presence with senjutsu, but he would have to use quite a bit of force to break out of this barrier. He crouched down and then jumped onto the nearest roof. He could not fly like devils, fallen angels, gods or angels. but he could jump high through his abilities, he had enough strength in his legs for it. Naruto looked again in the direction of where the fallen angel's aura was and then he turned around, he took a step forward and was about to jump to the nearest roof before stopping, he frowned as he felt a familiar aura. Why does she have to be here? Naruto felt the aura of the only person he couldn't ignore so easily. This person had a strong temper and features that Naruto could never ignore. He tried to ignore her, especially during the breaks, and yet this person always managed to engage Naruto in conversations. Naruto kept glancing at this person in class and it kept bringing back memories from his old life. He just stood there on the roof and looked up at the sky for a few seconds until he said desperately, "Fuck." He turned and jumped. He didn't want to, but he couldn't ignore her. If it were any other person, he would have just walked to the edge of the barrier, but with this person it was different. He jumped from roof to roof and could feel the two auras getting closer and closer. He finally landed on the ground in a crouch and went around a corner to see what was going on. The fallen angel had 6 wings, making it stronger than most Naruto had ever encountered. He had a scowl on his face, his green eyes shimmered with power and his short black hair swept in the wind because he was momentarily floating in the air. He wore a white shirt with a black coat and gray pants, and brown shoes. "Mio Gremory, any last words?" asked the fallen angel. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the last name. Mio's real name is Gremory? Wasn't that the name of the leader of the new Seidan faction? Thought Naruto. "I'll kill you 100 times. Mio's pink eyes shimmered with power as a red aura surrounded her. She was so mad. She just wanted to live in peace. She was once just a normal student before someone murdered her foster parents and she had to flee. At that time a man helped her to escape and from this man she learned the whole truth. She was the daughter of Wilbert Gremory, who was the leader of one of the 4 major factions in the underworld. Wilbert Gremory may have been called Gremory, but he had no connection with the Gremory clan. He was born and raised into the moderate faction. His mother left the Gremory clan because she fell in love with Wilbert's father, who was part of the moderate faction, so even though Mio's real name was Mio Gremory, she had no connection to the Gremory clan. She was completely alone at the moment. The man who was helping her died in a fight and she only just managed to escape. For the past half year, she has been able to live in peace here in Tokyo, but now she seems to have been rediscovered. "Ha! You don't have enough strength to even hurt me. You are weak. You might just be able to fight a fallen angel with 2 wings like that, but you don't stand a chance against me," said the fallen angel. He created a spear of light in his hand and threw it at Mio. The golden spear of light sped through the air faster than Mio thought. She was about to dodge, but she was just too slow. All she saw was the golden spear of light getting closer and closer. Such a spear of light has enough power to create a strong explosion and easily kill Mio. In addition, Mio was a devil and weak against light-based forces. She would definitely die if she was hit by that spear of light. Her entire life flew past her as the spear of light drew ever closer. She remembered her peaceful life with her foster parents and the good times until that horrible night came and her foster parents came. She didn't want to die yet. She still had so much to achieve. She would have to find and kill her parents' killer and avenge her parents. She would have to get stronger so that she could have a real life again, where she wouldn't always have to be afraid that a stronger opponent would come along and want to murder her, just like now. The fallen angel just smirked at the helpless look on Mio's face. He loved seeing that look on his victims. That look just before they died was always the best. He had his arms crossed over his chest and was just waiting for Mio to finally die. He had other devils to kill today. After all, there was more than one devil here in Tokyo. Just before Mio was hit, Mio felt a jolt and right after that she just disappeared, and the golden spear of light hit the ground creating an explosion. The ground was destroyed, and some chunks of earth flew away from the explosion in the blast. The windows of the buildings all shattered and the ground shook briefly before stopping. The fallen angel narrowed his eyes as Mio suddenly disappeared. That was never the speed of her. Someone saved her, thought the fallen angel. He felt her aura and looked to the side. He could see her now. She was momentarily held in the arms of a young man with spiky blonde hair and blue eyes. He looked up at the fallen angel with a blank face and held Mio securely in his arms. "You Uzumaki?" Mio asked. Startled, she never thought she would meet Naruto here, let alone be rescued by him. She was lowered by Naruto and when she was secure on both feet Naruto answered. "Are you alright?" Naruto's lifeless eyes looked straight into Mio's pink ones. There was that expression again. She could never understand why he had those eyes. He was the only boy in school who didn't always give her those looks or annoy her. Because of his status, no one dared to go near him and that's why she sometimes sought him out during the breaks. There she had peace from all the boys. "Yeah, thanks," Mio said. She still didn't know what to make of that. Naruto looked up at the fallen angel, who had only been observing the situation so far. Mio also looked at the fallen angel and narrowed her eyes. And who are you? Didn't think a fallen angel with more than 2 wings would be hanging around here, Naruto said. We have received reports of the deaths of several fallen angels in Tokyo. Looks like I found the culprit, huh? I was beginning to wonder how Mio Gremory could still be alive, since everyone had the specific instructions to specifically look out for her and kill her, said the fallen angel. Mio looked at Naruto in surprise when she found out about this. Did he make sure I wasn't threatened by fallen angels or heroes for so long? Mio thought, if it were true, then. Naruto sighed as the fallen angel spoke of it. He had only fought the fallen angels because he wanted to die fighting. But they were just too weak, even though he didn't have the same strength as in his old world. After all, he no longer had his partner by his side. Of course, even without Kurama, he was stronger than most, but still, by the end of his lifetime, his partner had accounted for much of his power. Without Kurama he wouldn't have stood a chance against Madara or Kaguya. Only through Kurama could he protect so many in the war. Mio could probably get this wrong, and if it turned out the way Naruto feared, then he would not have so much rest. He just hoped things would go back to normal after the fight. He would use his time somehow to do something and find a suitable opponent, and he would be alone as usual. Since you're about to die, I'll tell you my name. My name is Victor, Victor said with a grin, although I have to ask, who or what are you? Even now I don't feel any energy from you, and you're definitely not a normal person, Victor said. You'd like to know, wouldn't you? I am sorry, but I won't tell you. It could be that you would escape and then tell your superiors. After all, you created this barrier, and you can remove it at any time to escape, Naruto said. Though that wasn't possible, Naruto was faster than the fallen angel with 6 wings. He would catch up with him even though he couldn't fly himself. He didn't have a sacred gear to fly or any ability to match. He possessed the ability to fly only where he had Ashura mode against Kaguya. When he and Sasuke successfully sealed Kaguya, the borrowed chakra from Hagoromo that he had loaned to Naruto and Sasuke left Naruto and Sasuke's body again. Sasuke was able to keep his Rinnegan, but he no longer had the 6 paths chakra either. I can tell you my name, though. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said. As you wish, Naruto Uzumaki. Then just die without giving me this information, Victor said. He created a spear of light in his hand and threw it at Naruto and Mio. The golden spear of light sped through the air, and Mio already took a step back, seeing the extent of the destruction. Naruto did something no one thought he would. He lunged toward the golden spear of light, one hand open as he did so. Out of nowhere, something like a blue flame gathered over his palm. Victor narrowed his eyes when he saw that blue flame. It's not fire, is it? Thought Victor. His guess was confirmed when the blue flame changed and began to form into a rotating sphere. That wasn't a blue flame. It was chakra. Only yokai can use and control chakra. That would also explain why he couldn't feel Naruto's aura. If he used senjutsu, then it would be no wonder why he wouldn't feel anything. Even now he felt nothing. He could only feel the chakra revealed, which Naruto focused over his right hand. Naruto slammed his technique against the golden spear. After both techniques rubbed briefly, Naruto's technique began to pierce through the golden spear of light. The golden spear of light shattered into 1,000 small particles of light and then dissolved. Victor had already created 2 new spears of light and threw them at Naruto as well. Naruto twisted away in midair, dodging the first spear of light. Just before the other spear could hit him, Naruto slammed his technique into the spear of light, destroying that spear of light as well. His technique disappeared, and right after that a ring of golden flames appeared around Naruto. Still flying towards Victor, he thrust his arm forward. The ring of golden flames began to spin, and immediately thereafter it sped through the air. Victor narrowed his eyes and flew higher, avoiding the golden ring of fire. Naruto looked up because Victor was higher now. Out of nowhere Victor held 2 lightsabers in his hand, and immediately after that he flew off, leaving a ring of air in his wake. Mio watched as Victor drew closer and closer to Naruto. She wanted to do something, but she couldn't quite follow Victor's movements. He was just too fast for that. Her eyes widened as Victor appeared right in front of Naruto, swinging his 2 golden lightsabers. At first, she thought Naruto was done for now, but something seemed to prevent the 2 lightsabers from hitting Naruto. Victor couldn't believe it. He yelled once and kicked Naruto towards the ground, releasing his lightsabers in the process. Naruto flew towards the ground and landed safely in a crouch. Some dust kicked up as Naruto landed in a crouch. Naruto stood up and looked up at Victor. Victor just narrowed his eyes at Naruto. Naruto hadn't used any special technique to stop his lightsabers. He just snatched each blade with his bare hand. He never thought there would be a yokai who could stop a light-based weapon with his bare hands. He had heard of it before but didn't believe it. Many yokai could learn senjutsu, but few can actually use senjutsu, and even fewer are masters of this difficult art. A true master of senjutsu should have an extremely strong body, and now Victor believed in it. Naruto hadn't even caught his blades so that he didn't touch the blade. The lightsabers were simply stopped by Naruto's palm. The light blades were touching his skin directly. Actually, his lightsabers should be very effective against Naruto. He got a little sweat on his forehead when he saw Naruto's look. His lifeless blue eyes went icy cold. Victor swallowed once as his body started shaking a little. This feeling as if he could die at any moment was indescribable. His eyes widened when suddenly a blade came out of his chest. He looked down at his chest in disbelief, only to see nothing. He gasped once hard and then he looked down at his body. What was that? Thought Victor. He could have sworn he just got pierced by a sword. He looked down at Naruto and still saw his gaze. Victor had 6 wings, but he had never fought anyone like that before. Up to now there had always been weak opponents and he never had to deal with real bloodlust. This bloodlust that Naruto exuded was unbearable. He gritted his teeth and cried out once before raising both arms and creating a spear of light over his body. A golden aura appeared around Victor and the spear of light grew in size until it was 4 times the size of a human. Naruto narrowed his eyes and stood ready. He puts all his energy into this spear of light. Victor looked at Naruto and grinned evilly once. Naruto's eyes widened as Victor threw the spear at Mio. Naruto rushed straight into it and just disappeared. Mio's eyes widened as the giant spear of light flew in their direction. She's seen her whole life flash past her. Victor's grin widened as his spear of light hit something, setting off a massive explosion. The ground was torn open, and a blast wave was triggered. A crater formed around the point of impact. Victor was satisfied that he had killed one of the two. He looked around to find Naruto. He couldn't see him anywhere and slowly sank to the ground. He looked at the black plume of smoke as his black wings disappeared behind his back. He narrowed his eyes as he slowly made out a large shadow in the cloud of black smoke. What is that? Thought Victor. The black cloud of smoke continued to dissipate, eventually revealing the construction. His eyes widened as suddenly the ground beneath his feet turned to mud and his feet sank. He spread his wings and flew straight back into the air. So that's the ability to manipulate nature when you're a master of senjutsu, thought Victor. Mio looked at Naruto's back as he stood in front of her. She could hardly see anything because something completely surrounded the two of them. Light only came in through small holes. Naruto released his hands, and the construct began to sink back into the ground. Mio could now see what was protecting her and Naruto: wooden planks. Thought Mio. Several wooden planks had created a protective wall around Naruto and Mio and absorbed the force of the spear of light. Naruto looked up at Victor. Mio didn't feel it, but she could literally see it. The air around Naruto shimmered with the powerful force he radiated. The ground beneath his feet began to crack from Naruto's potent chakra. Naruto suddenly disappeared and appeared behind Victor. Victor's eyes widened as Naruto appeared right behind him. He had gotten faster than before. Victor hadn't even seen Naruto move. Naruto thrust his arm forward and hit Victor with a chakra-enhanced punch. Victor's pupils got as little as possible. His entire body was sending pain signals to his brain. It was a moment before Victor sped toward the ground, leaving behind several rings of air. He hit the ground with great force and his body sank into the ground, destroying him. A small crater was created in the process. Mio had to create a barrier in front of her to avoid being hit by the blast and the flying debris. She looked at the cloud of dust that had formed. She still couldn't quite believe it. Naruto was strong enough to defeat a fallen angel with 6 wings. It was just incredible from her perspective. Naruto landed safely in a crouch and slowly walked towards Victor. He raised his hand and a small golden flame appeared above it. He now stood in the small crater and saw the body of Victor. He couldn't move after that punch. He looked at Naruto and saw his lifeless blue eyes. They had no emotions and in general his facial expression was completely blank. He just stood there, holding a small golden flame in his hand. Please. Victor wanted to beg for mercy, but Naruto stopped him. He simply threw the small golden flame at Victor and lit him up. Victor started screaming as he was engulfed in golden flames. Naruto just turned and walked away. The barrier would dissolve soon after Victor died. He stopped when he heard his name. Mio ran to him and stopped when she was right in front of him. What else, Naruse? Naruto asked. He didn't want to stay in her presence any longer, otherwise, it would become more and more difficult to go and leave her. I want to thank. Without you I would be dead now. Mio looked straight into Naruto's eyes, and he saw her slightly red cheeks. He could only imagine that she was embarrassed to say thank you. Normally she wouldn't do something like that so easily. He knew her character well enough. She would normally express her gratitude in other ways. She might say thank you first, but then immediately look away and say that he wouldn't pride himself on it. In this world, Mio would be called a tsundere, but after this event, where she almost died, she would never do such a thing. No problem. See you at school, Naruto said. He walked slowly and just wanted to get away. No matter how or how far away, he just wanted to get away before she asked anything else he couldn't deny. So far, she seemed a bit reserved and maybe that was his only option. Mio looked after Naruto. She didn't know what to do. There he went. The person who had always protected her and helped her. Naruto was never someone who wanted anything from her or paid much attention to her. He had saved her more than once in this fight alone now. She looked after the man who was ready to protect her. Nobody else had done that for her before, except for the man who had died. However, this man had also been a servant of Wilbert's. She looked down and didn't know what to do. Would she have to change towns again? She had finally met some friends in the last half year, and she had really had fun here. She didn't want to move away again. At the moment she was only staying in a hotel because she would not have a fixed address, so no one could find out where she lived exactly. She had no allies left and the only man protecting her at the moment just walked away. She clenched her hands into two fists and looked after Naruto. He was already a good distance away from her and so she ran. She swore to find the person who killed her foster parents. She wanted to stay here in Tokyo. Naruto stopped when he heard his name. He frowned in desperation. It looks like he couldn't just get out of this mess like that. He turned and looked at Mio as she walked towards him. Her long beautiful red hair reminded him of the same person over and over again. It was impossible not to think of his mother when he saw that red hair. He had to concentrate not to show anything, with Mio Naruse or Gremory. It didn't matter what her real name was. The fact was, he couldn't ignore her, and especially her beauty. Mio stopped in front of him with a determined look on his face. Naruto could only watch helplessly as Mio looked away, cheeks slightly red, and said, "Please let me come with you." Naruto closed his eyes and sighed in desperation. He looked up at the sky and opened his eyes. Mio got a little nervous when he didn't answer and just looked at the sky. It didn't get any better when Naruto just turned around and started walking as the barrier completely dissolved and the two were surrounded by many people again. She looked down and already felt the feeling of helplessness coming back, but before she could really feel it, she heard his voice, "Hey Naruse." She glanced at his way and saw him standing there with his back to her. He was momentarily looking over his shoulder straight into her pink eyes. "Are you coming? I want to arrive today." Mio's eyes widened and immediately afterwards she started to smile. She ran and a tear rolled down her cheek. She had hope again that everything would be fine from now on. Naruto waited for Mio to be by his side. She smiled at him, and Naruto did the only right thing at that moment. He just looked and went forward. He didn't want her to see the gleam of life in his eyes again. Mio walked alongside Naruto and just smiled. She felt safe being around him. Someone looked after them both and narrowed their eyes. The person had noticed the barrier and wanted to see what was going on here. Just as she arrived, Naruto and Mio reappeared, and the barrier was dissolved. Whatever was happening behind the barrier seemed to have brought Mio and Naruto closer. Now she had the proof. She had an inkling all along, but she never had any proof. Naruto Uzumaki wasn't just a normal person. She didn't know what he was yet, but one thing was certain. He had knowledge of the supernatural and he himself had to have special powers, otherwise, he could not have been in the barrier. Yuki turned and started walking. She had to report that Tokyo wasn't going to be as peaceful as usual. Shed felt it recently. More and more supernatural beings are slowly appearing. Only yesterday she had killed a devil who was hanging around here. She wouldn't let anything happen to ordinary people. After all, it was her job as a heroine to save the normal people from the supernatural. A green force sparkled briefly in her yellow eyes before she just disappeared and left the scene. Naruto went with Mio to the outer part of Tokyo where Naruto's house was. How could it get so far? Thought Naruto. He sighed once and continued to look straight ahead. He was glad not to live right in the center of Tokyo. It was relatively quiet where he lived and there, he could sleep in peace without being woken up by cars that drove past the house too quickly and let their engines roar. He just hoped she didn't want to stay with him. So far, she only wanted to come along and nothing else. A few minutes later they were both standing in a side street. Mio was amazed when she saw Naruto's house. She had hardly believed it at first when he told her that he lived alone in a house, but now that she had seen it, of course she could only believe it. The Uzumaki residence was a two-story terraced house with a green painted exterior, a balcony on the second floor and a blue roof. Before you could get to the house, you had to go through a small wooden gate, which was connected to a wall. The wall went around the house once, blocking the view of the garden from the street. Naruto went ahead and opened the wooden gate. Mio followed him and looked at the garden, which led around the entire house. She would not have thought that such a beautiful sight awaited behind the wall. There were flowers everywhere in the garden, beautiful bushes with berries and other plants. There was even more than one small pond with fish inside. Naruto stopped when he noticed Mio looking at the garden. She seemed fascinated by the garden. Naruto wasn't a master in senjutsu for nothing. Growing flowers or entire trees was not a problem for him. He had prepared the garden where he was still in training to learn senjutsu in this world. Senjutsu was a little different in this world than in his, and that's why he had trained in his garden to control nature. It was different just becoming one with nature or becoming one with nature and being able to control it. In Naruto's world, he only used senjutsu to strengthen his body and increase the range of his attacks. In this world, Naruto used senjutsu more diversely. Here he could really control nature itself. It was almost as if Naruto had the Mokuton, wood style, mastered by Hashirama Senju. Have you prepared the garden like this? Mio asked. She looked at Naruto and he nodded. Yes, you should have figured it out by now. I can use senjutsu and that's how I made my garden like this, Naruto said. Mio just nodded and looked closely at Naruto. She couldn't feel any of his strength even now. She knew that Naruto was much stronger than herself. She could just deal with a fallen angel with 2 wings, and Naruto defeated a fallen angel with 6 wings. Given the show of strength, it wouldn't surprise her if Naruto was strong enough to defeat even a fallen angel with 8 or even 10 wings. You definitely have good taste, Naruto, Mio said, and went to some flowers and crouched down in front of them and smelled them once. Naruto just watched Mio, and out of nowhere a little wind came up. Her long red hair flowed elegantly to the side and gave the scene a special touch. Can you eat the berries? Mio asked when she saw a bush with blueberries growing on it. Naruto just walked over to the bush and picked one and popped it in his mouth. He swallowed them down. Yes, you can, Naruto said, and then he walked towards the door. Mio looked after Naruto and then she looked at the bush with the blueberries. She wanted to try them once, so she picked one and put it in her mouth. She tried them and her eyes widened. Those were the best blueberries she had ever eaten. She took a few more and ate them too. She didn't even know why they tasted so much better. Outwardly, they were no different from regular blueberries. Are you coming? Naruto called. He was on the doorstep and Mio was still in front of the bush. Mio got a little startled and looked at Naruto. She got up quickly and walked to the front door with red cheeks. She was totally embarrassed. She was gone from good taste. Naruto opened the door and went inside the house. Mio just followed him and looked around. She wouldn't have expected such a sight in the hallway either. Pictures of beautiful landscapes were hung everywhere. She took off her shoes and followed Naruto while looking at some pictures more closely. There was one picture that had particularly piqued her interest. It showed a kind of village surrounded by a wall. The architecture of the houses looked a bit older, but there was something special about this village, just the location and how the picture was drawn. The village was right in front of a huge cliff and there were a couple of faces carved into the cliff itself. She would really like to know where this village was. As she continued down the hallway, she eventually came to 2 doors. One door led to the large living area which included the kitchen and living room, and the other door led to another hallway which led to the rest of the house. Naruto opened the door to the living area and walked inside. Mio followed him and also looked around in this room. As before, she hadn't expected this sight. She would actually have thought of old furniture and hardly any decoration. But Naruto had normal furniture, which was mostly made of a certain wood, but they were a perfect match and looked good together. Here and there, too, there were pictures on the walls or in a photo frame on a chest of drawers. Naruto sat down on the couch and sighed once. Finally rest, thought Naruto. He dissolved his senjutsu and already felt better. He could sustain it for a very long time, but even he needs a break from the constant maintenance of this technique every now and then. There were different risks in the elemental nations than in this world. If you took in too much natural energy there, you would become a stone statue. In this world the nature of energy was corrupt, and it took training to deal with the energy. He hardly felt anything of this corruption, because he was a perfect sage in his world and therefore already had good prerequisites in this world to be able to master senjutsu again. Nevertheless, it got exhausting after several hours, and it was always a relief to dissolve the senjutsu when he was in his house. Because of one of his new abilities, he was also able to set up barriers, and there were several around his house, which not only protected the house, but also prevented anyone from outside from feeling the auras inside the house. Mio looked at Naruto when she suddenly felt some of his power. She couldn't sense auras from others as well as other people could, but if someone was right in front of her, she could feel it a little bit. Naruto's aura was pleasant and not overwhelming as she first thought because he was so strong. It was almost as if the sun's rays were shining on you. Naruto looked at Mio and saw the expression on her face. She just seemed a bit absent. He raised an eyebrow and then shrugged. So, Naruse, what are your plans from now on? Naruto asked. She was in his house now, but what happened next? What had the person imagined that Naruto could never ignore? He just hoped that she would leave afterwards, and he could go back to sleep. Mio looked at him a bit startled because she was absent for a moment. She had bathed briefly in the warmth that briefly emanated from Naruto. She also sat on the couch and looked at the floor. She didn't know what to do from now on. She was now with the only person who helped her and now. She had no idea. Naruto leaned back and let Mio think. He just closed his eyes and enjoyed the quiet a bit. For him this day had been way too wild again. First Takagawa was annoying him in class again. Then there was the matter of Chisato Hasagawa and last but not least the fight against that fallen angel. Instead of sleeping, he now had to take care of Mio. Even after 10 minutes, Mio still hadn't spoken. Naruto opened his eyes and looked at her. She seemed nervous and she only ever looked at him for a moment. Naruto sighed and went back to a normal sitting position. Why don't you tell me what's going on with you right now? It's not for nothing that a fallen angel is specifically looking for you, Naruto said. Mio looked at him in surprise and didn't seem so nervous anymore. She nodded. Okay, as you've probably heard, my real name is Mio Gremory. Naruse was my foster parents' last name. I grew up in the human world unaware of my origins or my powers. I had a beautiful and peaceful life. My father was an auto mechanic who always made everyone laugh. He always worked late, but he always made time in the evening to do my homework with me or to watch a movie with me and my mother. We used to have barbecues on the weekends in the summer and my dad invited the whole neighborhood over. Mio told the story in a gentle voice. Her gaze was dreamy as she remembered her father. Naruto just stayed silent while Mio told her story. He wouldn't dare say anything. He looked at her directly. Saying it all out once seemed to have a positive effect on her already. She didn't seem tense like she used to. We lived in a small suburb where there were not many residents. The whole neighborhood knew each other, and everyone helped everyone. If you broke a pipe somewhere, you just had to walk to the end of the street where someone lived who could fix it. No matter what problems we had, we could always rely on the others. There were 3 other children my age and I grew up with them. We were inseparable and screwed up a lot. Mio said with a slight giggle. She still remembered all the things she had done with the others. My mother was a cleaning lady and a bit strict at times. Since my father was always working until the evening. She had most of the work with me, but no matter what. She always gave me the closeness and protection of a mother. Whether I had problems or a stupid idea, my mother had always listened to me and supported me in everything. No matter what it was. When I got older, my father and my mother sometimes left me alone so that the two of them could have a nice evening. I always invited my friends to my place in the evenings and we always watched films that we weren't actually allowed to watch, said Mio. Naruto could tell right away from her looks and her story that she had a good childhood. She had the love of both parents and friends. He was glad that she had a nice childhood. But then this night came. Mio's voice became quieter and her smile disappeared. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the story slowly reached its climax. He was just waiting for something like this. Someone like Mio wouldn't look so lonely and sad for nothing when she thought no one was looking. I was woken up in the night by a strange noise, so I went downstairs. I noticed right away that there was a strange smell in the air. It smelled like it was burnt. I thought at first that my mother had left the stove on. So without further thought I went downstairs to turn off the stove. But as I started walking down the stairs, the smell grew stronger, and the darkness was illuminated by a reddish-yellow light. It flickered and got unusually warm. When I got to the ground floor, I saw it. There were flames everywhere and my parents. She started sobbing and her body started shaking. Naruto stood up and sat down next to her. He put a hand on her shoulder and reflexively Mio leaned right onto Naruto's shoulder. He could already imagine what else she would have said, but right now, something else was more important. Mio held onto his black blazer as she buried her head in his torso. Her sobs grew louder and after a short while she began to howl uncontrollably. All the emotions she buried for the last 2 years because she needed to be strong came to the surface again. She hadn't had anyone to tell these things to. Wilbert's servant may have shown her how to use magic and helped her survive, but he had never helped her in such matters. He never showed emotion and that's why she didn't even try to connect with this man. He was her protector and that was it. That was all there was. She just couldn't anymore. Her body seemed to realize that it could now let go with Naruto close by. Mio had been looking for this warmth for so long. That warmth emanating from Naruto, her subconscious, her body and everything else just wanted to let it all out. Naruto just held Mio so she wouldn't fall to the ground. He just watched her with a whole new expression on his face. His eyes showed understanding and caring. It was as if the story had triggered something in him. Naruto didn't care what was happening to him at the moment. I can already imagine how the story would end, after her parents died. She must have realized who she was. She had to learn a lot to survive. She had lost her peaceful life in one night and everything else too. She was forced into a fate she was not responsible for. It was just like me. I didn't have a choice in my Jinchuriku status either, because of other people's choices. Mio has had to suffer and go through a lot. He closed his eyes and clearly remembered all the scenes where he was ignored and beaten by the villagers as a child. He hadn't the best life until he met Sensei Iruka, the Ichirakus, and the third Hokage. It wasn't until Genin that his life really got better, where he then got into a team with Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Mio. Some time had passed, and she had fallen asleep on his legs with her head. Naruto's hand ran over her long red hair a little while he looked at her sleeping face. I will not allow anyone else to suffer such a fate. Not if there's anything I can do about it, thought Naruto. His blue eyes looked a little different than before. A small spark could be seen in them, and his complete aura looked different than before. He picked her up carefully and carried her through the house. He went into the hallway and after that he climbed the stairs. He walked past his room and then turned into the guest room. He put her on the double bed and covered her up. He looked at himself again and then turned and walked out of the room. He closed the door quietly behind him and took his cell phone out of his pocket. He called the only number he had saved and went to his room. His room was the room connected to the balcony. He lit one cigarette time and took a drag on it. He blew the smoke out into the world and then heard a female voice on the other side of the line. Naruto took the cigarette from his lips and looked up at the sky. Yes, it's me, Ms. Hasagawa. I need your help, Naruto said. What can I help you with, Uzumaki? Chisato asked. She was currently standing in her apartment and looking out the window. She was looking in a specific direction. I need all the information about the Gremory clan, Naruto said. So far, Chisato had only superficially explained to him what factions existed among the demons and special clans such as the Bael, Gremory or Lucifer clan. Did something happen? Chisato asked while adjusting her glasses once. Until now, Naruto had never really asked her to do anything specifically. It was a bit unusual that he called at all. Usually, it was always her who called or texted him. Yes, Naruto said simply. He didn't want to discuss the situation over the phone. There could always be someone overhearing. Why don't you come to me and then you can tell me everything? I recently cooked and I have some leftovers. You can eat something and tell me everything in peace, Chisato said. Snapping her finger once, in her kitchen, several small green magic circles appeared on the table and right after that several plates full of food appeared. Okay. I'll be there in a few minutes. I just have to do something, Naruto said. He hung up and flicked the cigarette from the balcony. He flicked once and after that the cigarette burst into golden flames and burned to ash before it even got close to the ground. Naruto went to his room and looked at his black blazer. He mostly wore school clothes because the school uniform itself was also comfortable and it suited almost every situation. He took off his black blazer because it was still wet from Mio's tears. He put it over his chair and went to his closet. In his room was a single bed, a desk with a laptop and a lamp on it, and a chair in front of the desk. Then, last but not least, there was a wardrobe. There was an orange carpet on the floor. His duvet and pillow were also orange. He hardly ever wore orange anymore, but he still had to have some orange in his life. He opened the closet and since he didn't want to change completely, he just grabbed a new black blazer and put it on. He then went into the hallway and closed the door behind him. He looked back into the guest room to see if Mio was still asleep. Well, she seems to be still asleep, thought Naruto. He closed the door and then went down the stairs. He went to the front door and put on his shoes. He opened the front door and went out. He locked the door behind him and looked around. He raised a finger and moved them in straight lines. Several kanji characters appeared one after the other and right after that you could briefly see how a barrier was created in front of the front door. That should be enough for now, thought Naruto. He then disappeared and reappeared in a hallway a few minutes later. Naruto looked around and couldn't see anyone. He nodded and calmly walked down the long hallway. At the end of the hall was a door and there was his goal. He was currently in a skyscraper building that was fairly central in Tokyo. Chisato Hasagawa lived in this skyscraper. Naruto had never been before in such a building and that's why he looked out the windows while walking. The view is something like on my father's head in Konoha, thought Naruto. When he got to the end of the hall, he knocked and soon heard footsteps. The door revealed Chisato Hasagawa in her usual outfit only without the white lab coat. Come in Uzumaki, Chisato said and made way. Naruto bowed once and walked into the apartment. Chisato closed the door behind him and followed Naruto into the large living room. It was common in Japan for the kitchen and living room to be together. Naruto could see several plates of food at the dining table. You didn't lie about the food, Naruto said. He had to say that the smell was very pleasant. Sit down and then we can talk, Chisato said. Naruto sat down at the dining table, and she sat across from him. Naruto looked at all the dishes. Everything looked good no matter what dish he was looking at. Then tell me what exactly happened, Chisato said. She adjusted her glasses once and Naruto met her green eyes. His face was blank as usual, but Chisato could see something in his eyes, a little spark, a little light and a little sign of life. Whatever had happened had awakened something in Naruto again. 2 hours later Naruto swallowed the last bite and then put the cutlery on the empty plate. He had told Chisato everything that had happened, and he had eaten. I understand. So, you've decided to protect her from now on. I am glad you finally found a meaning, Naruto Uzumaki, Chisato said with a smile. Naruto sighed and looked out the window while resting his face on his hand. I have little choice. Naruse doesn't have anyone right now if I am reading this correctly, and I couldn't just stand by. You're just keeping your promises like usual, Chisato said with a smile. It has always been like this. She had seen his entire life where she found him. She wouldn't have healed Naruto had she not deemed him worthy of continuing to live. Naruto Uzumaki was truly a special man. He had a childhood like no one else had. He was always lied to, used and ignored by everyone. Some of the villagers even beat and abused him. He had a few people who took care of him, but that wasn't nearly enough people. A child should normally never experience so much at this age. He had experienced more in his 16 years of life in the elemental nations than most devils, fallen angels or other supernatural beings in several thousands of years. Normally he should have been consumed with hate, and instead of that Madara Uchiha it should have been Naruto who would have drawn the entire world into a war. Because of his story, that end result would have made more sense than his life path. No matter what happened to him or who hurt him, he never gave up. He always smiled and always trained so he could protect the few people who were there for him. He had always proven his words with actions. No matter what he said, Naruto Uzumaki kept every promise to the end. He kept training to be able to protect everyone, and after many years he managed to be hailed as the hero of Konoha. She was sure that no other man would have walked this path. Naruto Uzumaki was unique and special. She had never seen or met such a pure soul. He never gave up and kept his promises even if he died doing it. There were enough moments in his life where he was willing to die just so he could keep his promises and protect others. Naruto just shrugged and looked out the windows for a moment before looking into her eyes. So, what can you tell me about the Gremory clan? I already told you that the current Satan and leader of the new Satan faction was called Searzex Gremory. The grandfather of Searzex had a sister at that time, who was called Mito Gremory. Naruto raised an eye when he heard the name. Hashirama Senju's wife was also named Mito. It was weird to hear the same name here as well. Mito Gremory eventually met a devil from the moderate faction. They both fell in love, and because Mito couldn't be with this devil, she secretly left the Gremory clan. There have always been some issues between the moderate and the new Satan faction, and it wasn't allowed for someone from one faction to love someone from another faction. Mito was accepted into the moderate faction, and there she married her husband. The son of these two was named Wilbert Gremory. Wilbert Gremory is the biological father of Mio Naruse or Mio Gremory. Wilbert's wife was then killed by someone from the Demon Lord faction. The Demon Lord faction and the moderate faction were on the same continent in the underworld. The Demon Lord faction wanted to claim the entire continent for themselves, and that's why they want to kill everyone in the moderate faction. These two factions have been at war for a very long time, Chisato explained. Naruto now understood why Mio had the name she had. Does that mean she has no connection to the Gremory clan? Naruto asked. He actually thought he could bring Mio to her family. She would definitely be safer there than with him. He can protect her, but being with her family would still be different. There she would have family again, and with Naruto she would currently have nothing but himself. Yes, her foster parents were Wilbert's servants. He didn't want his newborn daughter to be drawn into the war between the moderate and Demon Lord factions. He knew that many would want his daughter, so he sent her to the human world, Chisato said. I see, so she really doesn't have anyone anymore, Naruto said thoughtfully. Now he had confirmation. He had already made up his mind to protect her, but having his suspicions confirmed only strengthened his resolve. He would protect Mio no matter the cost. But she has someone, Chisato said. Naruto looked at Chisato, and without having to ask, Chisato just pointed her finger at Naruto. She has you. You are her ally from now on, Naruto Uzumaki. You have chosen your path, which you wanted to go on in this world. No matter what has happened so far, you were meaningless in this world. You lost your way, but you found a way from now on, Chisato said. Naruto said nothing and stood up. He just went to the window and looked over Tokyo. No matter what happens, I will stand by your side and help you, Chisato said as she stood next to him. Naruto looked at her. Why? He asked. He still couldn't understand it. She had seen his entire life and yet she helped him. He just didn't get it. How could a goddess like her help him? Chisato put a finger to his lips. You'll find out sometime. But now you should go back. Rest and go to sleep. The path you have chosen will not be easy. You'll need all your strength to walk it, Chisato said, taking her finger from his lips. Naruto looked into her green eyes and said nothing. He suppressed the urge to blush and just nodded. He didn't know how he could ignore it until now. But Chisato Hasegawa was a goddess after all. Whether as a status or really in terms of appearance, He could only imagine that he hadn't had any feelings until now and that Mio would slowly bring his feelings back. The sun was slowly rising as Mio's body moved. First it was her fingers, then her arm, and then her whole body. She rose to a sitting position. Opening her eyes as she did so, she rubbed the sleep from her eyes and looked around. She didn't remember what had happened yesterday. All she knew was that she hadn't slept that well in a long time. She really felt completely rested and this mattress was very comfortable too. Her eyes widened as she realized this wasn't her hotel room. She was currently sitting on a double bed and otherwise there was a desk with a lamp on it, a wardrobe, a chair in front of the desk and a chest of drawers. She removed the blanket and saw that she was still wearing her school clothes. Where am I? Mio asked herself. She got up and went to the window. She saw a familiar garden and remembered it straight away. She was with her classmate Naruto Uzumaki. Her cheeks flushed as she remembered yesterday. She had actually fallen asleep on his legs. But shortly afterwards she looked at the ground with a thoughtful look. She felt a lot better, and her body wasn't as tense as it used to be. She could remember everything Naruto had done for her. And she looked at the door that led to the hallway. She was able to get rid of everything that she had buried inside for so long yesterday. Naruto just let her speak and didn't interrupt her, and as she slowly started to collapse, he just offered her his shoulder. She felt safe again long after waking up. She picked up the doorknob and turned it. She opened the door and went into the hallway. She went down the stairs because she heard noises from below. She didn't know why, but she had to smile a little. When she opened the door to the living area, she saw him, the man who protected her and helped her without expecting anything in return. He had even let her sleep here. Naruto was currently lying on the couch reading a book. There was a music channel on the TV wherever there was music. She slowly walked into the room and looked at Naruto. He seemed to have noticed her presence because he pulled the book aside in front of his face and looked at her. Good morning, Naruse, Naruto said, straightening into a sitting position. He closed the red book and placed it on the small table in front of the couch. Mio watched him get up and then looked at her. How did you sleep? Naruto asked. She hadn't noticed it directly, but now she saw it. His face was still blank, but she could see something unusual in his eyes. It was almost as if some life had come back to his lifeless eyes. Mio nodded yes. Thank you. Sorry about yesterday, Mio said blushing. She looked sideways and then back at Naruto. Then it's probably time to discuss everything else, Naruto said and turned around. He sat back down on the couch and Mio looked at him a bit confused. Huh? What do you mean, Naruto? Mio asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow when he heard his first name. Now she calls me Naruto. Thought Naruto. He shook his head briefly and then said, how we're going to deal with your situation from now on, Naruto said. Mio remained silent and just sat down next to him. She looked into Naruto's blue eyes with her pink eyes. I could already guess what the end was that you couldn't pronounce anymore. I know that feeling when you're forced into a situation you can't help. Naruto looked down and closed his eyes. Mio looked and recognized the facial expression immediately. He looked at her again. I've decided to protect you from now on, Naruto said. Mio's eyes widened when she heard those words. Why? She asked, startled. She couldn't believe it. Naruto would protect her from now on? I can't just watch someone suffer like that. I've been through this phase of life myself and I promised myself that I would help other people if they were forced into a similar position to myself, Naruto said. Mio held both hands in front of her face and her arms were shaking. Naruto did something she had never seen before. He raised his arm and put a hand on her head. He started smiling and said, don't worry, Mio. I promise that from now on I will protect you and stay by your side. You are no longer alone in your struggle. Whatever problems you have, I'll help you as best I can, Naruto said. Naruto was pushed onto the couch as Mio slammed into him and latched onto him. Naruto just held her securely in his arms and waited for her to calm down. When Mio's body stopped shaking, he released her, and she straightened up again. She made a bit distance between herself and Naruto and crossed her arms under her chest. Her cheeks were red, and she said, but don't think anything weird because of that, Mio said. Naruto's face was blank again and he just picked up his book. He sat back and started reading while the music got a little louder. Mio carefully looked at Naruto and saw that he was already reading again. She got a visible vein over her eyes. Hey! Don't ignore me! She yelled. Naruto paused a moment before looking at her. He pretended not to hear her. Did you say something, Mio? Naruto asked. A red aura appeared around Mio and that's when Naruto decided to just get up and quickly leave the room. Mio called his name as Naruto went up the stairs. He had a slight smile on his face when he heard her voice. Good, she's the same again, thought Naruto. Mio already had enough strength to be as usual. His face blanked again as he went out onto the balcony and lit a cigarette. He looked into the distance and narrowed his eyes. He closed his eyes briefly and activated Senjutsu. He opened his eyes and could feel it. A devil lurked around his house. From the aura it was a succubus. She didn't approach the house, just watched it. He pretended not to feel her and just calmly finished his cigarette. When he finished the cigarette and he felt the succubus change position, he just disappeared. He emerged from around a corner a few seconds later and waited. After 5 seconds the succubus ran around the corner and slammed into him. He had his arms crossed over his chest and was looking down at the succubus that had landed on her ass. Ah! The succubus jumped when she opened her eyes and saw Naruto. She had already forgotten the pain she felt in her butt from falling on her butt. Why is there a succubus watching my house, huh? Naruto asked. He just unleashed a little of his murderous lust so he could get his point across. His freezing blue eyes looked straight into the purple eyes of the succubus. The succubus started to laugh nervously as she felt the murderous lust in his gaze. The succubus had slit purple eyes and small black horns on her head, dressed in a black leather revealing outfit, white leggings with light pink horizontal stripes, and black boots, as well as small black wings located near her waist. I hear, said Naruto. I was sent by Wilbert-sama, said the succubus. Naruto was surprised at this statement and stopped projecting his lust for murder on her. He narrowed his eyes. Why would Wilbert Gremory send someone? Naruto asked. Wilbert-sama had heard about the death of his servant recently who was supposed to be taking care of Mio-sama. I was sent to protect Mio-sama, said the succubus. Why should I believe you? Naruto asked. Here, said the succubus. She held out one hand and immediately thereafter a purple magic circle appeared over her palm. Naruto braced himself immediately but relaxed as a hologram appeared. That must be Wilbert. It fits the description Ms. Hasagawa gave me, thought Naruto. Wilbert's hologram began to move, and he spoke. I don't know who you are, but I learned that you protected my daughter. Naruto narrowed his eyes. How could Wilbert know about this? I just saved Mio yesterday, thought Naruto. I would ask you to continue to protect my daughter and take good care of her. I sent Maria to you so that she could help you, said the hologram from Wilbert, and then the hologram disappeared. How does Wilbert know about me? Naruto asked. He understood right away that Wilbert knew about him. He had never noticed anyone outside watching him. He rolled his eyes as he thought of Takagawa. Naturally, he must be a spy or something, otherwise, there would have been no devil left at the school, thought Naruto. Forget the question. I already know it, Naruto said. Nevertheless, why should I just let one of Wilbert's servants near me or Mio? Wilbert could have taken Mio to the underworld long ago. Even if there was war there, she would be safer with her father in the immediate vicinity than here in the human world with all the heroes and fallen angels, Naruto said. Maria was getting more and more nervous. She didn't even want to meet Naruto. She actually planned to watch the house first and maybe intervene in a dangerous situation to help him or Mio. Then there wouldn't be this distrust like it is now. She would have conveyed directly that she was on their side. I am Mio's half-sister, said Maria. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that answer. He would have expected many answers, but not this answer. Maria looked panicked. Damned. I shouldn't have said that, thought Maria. She had just said something because his eyes were getting darker, and she was getting scared. After all, he had killed a fallen angel with 6 wings, and she wouldn't stand a chance against Naruto. Naruto's gaze normalized and he suddenly held out his hand to Maria. Maria looked surprised into Naruto's blue eyes, and when she saw his look, she took Naruto's hand. He pulled her into a standing position and then let go of the hand. Is that right? Naruto asked. She nodded. Yes. Wilbert-sama doesn't know himself, but he is my father. After Mio's mother died, he once had something with my mother. He only sees me as a servant because I haven't yet dared to speak to him about this topic. I volunteered to find Mio-sama so I could meet my half-sister, Maria said. Naruto just looked into Maria's eyes. She swallowed once as his blue eyes stared at her. It was like he was looking into her soul. She got a little sweat on her forehead and leaned her body back a little. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. He straightened up again because he had leaned forward slightly. All right, I'll believe you for now, but I am warning you, Maria, Naruto said. If I see even one sign that you want to cheat or hurt me or Mio, I'll kill you without hesitation and without mercy, Naruto said. Maria nodded very quickly. You could only see her head out of focus at times. She nodded so quickly. Understood, said Maria. Good. Go to your place and I'll talk to Mio about it, Naruto said. He turned and walked away. Maria sighed heavily and looked after Naruto. It really wasn't planned that way. She was able to gain his trust once, but she was supposed to move in with Naruto. But how was she supposed to do that nicely? Naruto wasn't just someone to charm with. She was too weak for that. He only trusted her enough to believe her first and not kill her outright. Even so, Naruto was still suspicious of her. She would have to come up with something so that she could also live with Naruto. After all, She would have to be close to Mio in order to be able to carry out her assignment. She lived there now. Maria was sure of that. Mio's hotel room was empty, and all her clothes were gone. She could only assume that Naruto would have taken all of Mio's clothes. She turned and activated a teleportation circuit. She would have to report first and then she would see how things went. A silver magic circle appeared above her and descended. Maria disappeared, leaving nothing behind. So, you've made your first move. I should start taking action too, otherwise it'll never get to you, a man thought. The man stood on top of a utility pole and looked at where Maria and Naruto were a few minutes ago. He wore an elegant suit and a white mask. Everything slowly started to roll. It started with Naruto. He was just waiting for Naruto and Mio to get closer. The only question was how the hero clan would react to this. He would have to wait a little longer before he could initiate anything. The man turned and took another look at the spot before a purple portal opened in front of him and he disappeared inside. Naruto reappeared on his balcony and sighed. So much for my quiet life, thought Naruto. After just one night, he was visited by more than one supernatural being. He knew exactly who had been watching him and Maria. He could perfectly sense his aura through senjutsu. I should talk to the guy tomorrow. I don't like it when people watch me and just think they can get away with it, thought Naruto. He lit another cigarette and smoked in peace. He released his senjutsu and looked up at the sky. The sun was already high in the sky. He had notified the school that he and Mio would not be coming today. With a bit of supernatural flair, he could sell it great. He thought about what to do today. It would probably be the best course of action if he went shopping with Mio. He had already fetched all her things from the hotel. He could just walk through the front entrance and not even be noticed. After packing her things and putting them in a suitcase, he just disappeared and left the suitcase in front of Mio's door. Since she would be living here from now on, Naruto had brought her things straight away. However, he had noticed that she had next to nothing personal. He can imagine that she would like to have a few more things. He would ask her right away after he had talked to her about Maria and Wilbert. Naruto put out the cigarette and then went inside. He closed the balcony door behind him and left his room. When he closed the door of his room, he could see Mio. She stood in the hallway and looked at Naruto. Are you okay, Mio? Naruto asked. She no longer seemed angry or mad. Her temper seemed to have calmed down. Yes, thanks again for everything, Mio said with a smile. Naruto just nodded and then asked, need help unpacking? Naruto asked. Mio shook his head. No, I've already unpacked everything. I hope you weren't looking at my underwear, Mio said with her hands on her hips. She looked a bit menacing, and Naruto shook his head. No, I didn't even touch your things. I just levitated them with a simple spell, Naruto said. That was an outright lie. He had touched every single piece of Mio clothing in his hands, but she didn't need to know that. He wouldn't have thought Mio would have this special underwear besides the normal ones. He was amazed at times, since he hadn't any experience with women. Even though he was the hero of Konoha and Jiraiya was his master, he was still a virgin. Mio gave him a quick stare before just smiling. Then I believe you, said Mio. Let's go downstairs. I just met a succubus claiming to be your half-sister. I think you're interested, Naruto said. Mio got serious and just nodded. She followed him into the living room and listened to what had happened. She knew, of course, that her biological father was Wilbert, but she didn't feel a connection to him. To her, her real parents were her foster parents, who had died in the horrible night. She was raised by her foster parents, and she had a family with them. Her foster parents gave her the childhood that every child should have. She had the love of both parents, friends in the neighborhood and other things. Naruto put a cup of tea on the table in front of Mio and then sat across from her at the dining table. In the large living area, there was also a normal dining table, which stood between the furnishings of the kitchen and living room. Thank you, Mio said with a smile. No problem, Naruto said, picking up his own cup. He took a sip and then put the cup back on the table. So, do you want to meet your half-sister or would you rather not? I'll be honest, Mio. I find her appearing out of nowhere a bit too suspicious. You've been alone for the past half-year, and no one showed up, and now that you've found an ally in me, a succubus suddenly appeared claiming to be your half-sister, Naruto said. Mio nodded yes. It really looks a bit suspicious, Mio said. She noticed one thing straight away about Naruto. He left nothing to chance. Whatever it was, in the time that she knew him she had noticed it several times. No matter what was happening around Naruto, he could always react and seem to know what was going on, be it during the breaks, where he was always willing to avoid some students or, as he always knew if something happened, and he was targeted, he had gained a certain reputation over time, which is why no one dared to attack him or even get too close. Mio and Yuki both have a lot of fans, and the fact that the two always hung out around a specific boy didn't sit well with the other fans. Normally, fans would keep each other from getting too close to either Yuki or Mio, but no matter what all fans did or planned, Naruto always knew what was going on and had solved or diffused every situation within a few seconds. As time went by, fewer and fewer boys dared to do anything against Naruto. Many rumors went around about certain looks that Naruto used. Everyone spoke of a near-death experience where they thought they died for a brief moment. In these situations, Naruto had simply projected his bloodlust onto the boys and thus silenced every single boy directly. Such an experience shapes a normal person, and they are now all more afraid of Naruto than anything else. Besides that, do you still want to meet her? Naruto asked. He would prefer to just leave it alone. He still had no idea what Maria was up to, but one thing Naruto knew for sure. This girl wasn't sent by Wilbert without a reason, and he wouldn't even be surprised if someone else had a hand in it. Had seen scenarios like this before, where one enemy appeared but was only used by another. Mio looked thoughtful and looked at the floor. To be honest, she didn't know if she wanted to meet Maria. Naruto had made a very good point about it, saying that she was alone for half a year. Why hadn't her biological father sent someone sooner? Then maybe she wouldn't have gotten into the current situation in the first place. I don't know, Mio said. She didn't know what she wanted right now. In one sense she wanted to meet her family, but in another sense Wilbert, Maria and the rest of the moderate faction had just left her alone for 6 whole months. She wasn't sure if she could believe Maria's statement that Wilbert only found out about his servant's death a few days ago. If it had been 2 weeks or maybe 3 before Maria was sent out, Mio might have believed it, but 6 long months? She couldn't believe such a lie. But I tend to say no, I have you and my friends at school now. Mio said with a smile. She knew she had dragged Naruto into this whole thing. Although he had saved her of his own accord, she could have simply disappeared so as not to drag him into her life. But she stayed with him and didn't want to leave him. She was selfish and she wouldn't make excuses. She would stay by his side and stand sincerely beside him. It was the least she could do for him. He did so much for her and there was nothing she could do right now but this one thing. Naruto nodded. Understood. Then I take it you don't want to join the moderate faction, Naruto said. Mio shook her head and that was answer enough for Naruto. He took another sip from his cup of tea and then put the cup back on the table. Then let's leave the topic and come to something completely different. I thought maybe we both should go shopping. I thought you might need more stuff from now on. So far, my number of towels and such was enough for me, but you will definitely need more. I only have normal ones and not particularly large ones. I heard women like big towels. Besides that, you probably want other things as a woman, Naruto said. And again, he did it. Mio really didn't know how she could ever repay him for his actions. She barely had any money herself and that meant he had to pay for everything. He seemed to know that, too, and he didn't indicate that she would ever have to repay him. What could she do in this situation? Okay, I'd be happy, Mio said with a smile. Should she have declined? She didn't know, but she didn't want to deny it either. She would feel bad about it. The only way she could give something back right now was to support Naruto's every suggestion. Otherwise, she simply couldn't offer him anything. Good. Let's go then when we've finished our tea, Naruto said. He enjoyed a cup of tea with Mio in peace and then put the cups in the dishwasher. He and Mio got dressed and left the house. Although neither of them went to school today, both wore their school clothes. Naruto also had to admit that he hardly wore any other clothes. 90% of his clothes consisted of school clothes. The school uniform was just comfortable, and he didn't know why he needed different clothes. Since Mio only had her school clothes, of course she wore them too. Naruto did something different than usual for the first time today. Even if he covered his aura with senjutsu, others could still feel Mio's aura. He didn't use senjutsu in public anymore because it wouldn't do any good either way. That way others would know someone was with Mio. So this method had a deterrent factor. At least Naruto hoped so. He only went into senjutsu sometimes to check that no one was following the two. If no one follows the two at the moment, then he dissolves his senjutsu again. What he was exactly could not be made out by his mere aura. Where are we going, Naruto? Mio asked. To the mall. There we will find everything you need. There are shops for clothes and the other shops. We can eat there too since we haven't had anything today, Naruto said. Mio nodded and happily walked alongside Naruto. She could really breathe when she walked next to Naruto. Being next to him made her feel really safe. She wasn't the least bit afraid that an enemy might show up at any moment. After 20 minutes they were both in the mall and the first port of call was a clothing store. They both walked in, and Naruto said, "Go pick out some things. I'll wait for you here in front. Take your time, because we don't have anything else planned for today," Naruto said. At the entrance there were a couple of chairs to sit on. It was not uncommon for a man to sit there and wait for the woman. Can I really choose whatever I want? Mio asked, feeling really weird about it. She wanted new clothes, of course, but still it wasn't right. After all, Naruto would have to pay for everything. Yes, I already told you. Choose what you want. I have enough money, don't worry, Naruto said. He sat down in one of the chairs and leaned back and closed his eyes. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and activated his senjutsu. While he wasn't right next to Mio, he would always be able to sense where she was and if a potential enemy was around. Mio nodded and turned around. She disappeared down one of the many aisles and started looking at clothes. Naruto sighed once, enjoying the quiet a bit. If he remembered one thing from his old life, women can take a long time choosing clothes, and it wouldn't surprise him that Mio would be different there, but he wouldn't complain. Sitting around didn't bother him anymore and he could just relax. After 20 minutes he opened his eyes and looked to the side. "Nonaka," Naruto said. Yuki was standing in her school clothes next to Naruto, and with her yellow eyes she looked at Naruto. "Where were you today?" Yuki asked. "At home," Naruto said. "How come?" "You look healthy," Yuki said. "You already know why, so why the questions?" Naruto asked. Yuki just looked at him and stayed silent. She looked down one of the hallways where Mio was currently. Naruto raised an eyebrow and after a few seconds shrugged. "Can you come with me for a moment?" Yuki asked. "As long as it doesn't take more than 5 minutes," Naruto said. He got up and looked at Mio again. She was going to the changing rooms, and that would mean he could get out of here for a moment. Since there was no one else in the mall with special abilities besides Yuki, Naruto wasn't worried about leaving Mio alone for a few minutes. Naruto and Yuki walked out of the store and went to a restaurant. They both sat down at a table and looked at each other. "So, what does a heroine want from me?" Naruto asked. He leaned back and looked into Yuki's yellow eyes. "Why are you helping Naruse?" Yuki asked. "She was alone, since nobody else did. I decided to help her," Naruto said. "If you continue to help her, then I'll have to see you as an enemy at some point, and if the order came, then I would fight you," Yuki said. "Sure thing," Naruto said. He really didn't know what this conversation was supposed to bring. This entire conversation was just a confirmation for both sides. Yuki already knew that Mio was now living with Naruto and that he was helping her. Naruto knew from Chisato that Mio was a surveillance target, and if the village ordered her elimination, he would have to fight Yuki. She was a heroine and therefore Mio's natural enemy and his natural enemy too. "Is there anything else?" Naruto asked. "Please don't help her. You saved all people from being harmed by the fallen angels. So why are you helping a devil who just takes advantage of people?" Yuki asked. He frowned. "Keep helping her, Nonaka. I am helping her because I decided to. She was alone and she couldn't help her situation. She's never done anything to a human," Naruto said and stood up. He looked at her again and said, "Aren't heroes there to protect those who need help and are alone? She was alone and you did nothing but watch her suffer day after day." Naruto turned around and then walked back. Yuki looked after him and closed her eyes. She got up after 2 minutes and went on her way. She had hoped to persuade Naruto, but now she would have to report him as well. She still didn't know what Naruto was exactly. All she knew was that he was not human and not a devil. As she walked towards the exit, Naruto's last words kept echoing in her head. She looked down and recalled a scene where she was saved by a devil when she was a little girl. She only lived because of one devil, but in the same move she had lost many friends because of devils. The heroes were in charge of protecting ordinary people from the supernatural. They were different from the church. Heroes specifically fight fallen angels, yokai, and devils, while the church did other things as well. They also fought devils and yokai, of course, but there have been enough instances where some exorcists teamed up with fallen angels to fight devils. Heroes would never do this. She stopped short and looked in the direction where Naruto had disappeared. She was alone, and you did nothing but watch her suffer day after day. She shook her head and walked on. She tried to get those words out of her head, but somehow, she didn't make it. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't forget those words. Naruto sat back down in the chair in the clothing store and sighed. He looked down one of the hallways because Mio was calling him. He got up and went to her. He knew one thing. Today was going to be long. Naruto stopped short when he felt someone new appear in town. He just looked at a wall as if there was a ghost there. He narrowed his eyes as he felt that aura. He had never felt such an aura, but still he knew right away who that was, or more specifically what that being was. It was a devil's aura, but there was also a part of the aura that was just like his own. This devil must have been reincarnated with the evil peace system, thought Naruto. He would never have expected this kind of supernatural here in Tokyo. This type of supernatural being was usually found in Kyoto or in Kanto. There really wasn't a single one of his races to be found here. He just hoped the creature wouldn't find him. This being would probably be the only one that could sense his true existence. After all, this being was just like Naruto since he was thrown into this world and changed and gained new abilities as a result. At least this being was partly like Naruto. "Victor was killed?" asked a man with black hair and red eyes. "Yes, Kokebiel-sama, his signature has expired, and Mio Gremory is still alive. said an exorcist while kneeling in front of Kokabeel. Kokabeel sat on some kind of throne, which was in an abandoned cathedral. The cathedral was pretty run down, and all the windows were smashed. The ceiling had some holes and there were cracks in the floor everywhere. This cathedral has not been visited by ordinary people for a very long time. Kokabeel had the appearance of a tall, pale man with long black hair and narrow, blood-red eyes. Unlike other fallen angels, Kokabeel had pointy, elf-like ears. Kokabeel was one of the rare fallen angels with 10 pitch black wings. He was one of the leaders of the Grigori group. Even when he did mostly his own thing, he had many fallen angels under his command and many expelled exorcists. He wore a black robe with detailed accessories and purple shoulder pads with gold streaks on the side. Kokabeel frowned. So, it's really true. Someone unknown has established his base in Tokyo. Mio Gremory has allied herself with this unknown someone, thought Kokabeel. He was bored and finally wanted some action again. He finally wanted to feel the thrill of a good fight again. How long had it been since he hadn't fought properly? He still didn't understand how Azazel could have decided at that time that the fallen angels would withdraw from the war, even when they were on the verge of winning. He was sure that the fallen angels were the strongest race. They were not bound by the bidding of normal angels and had effective abilities against beings of darkness such as devils or yokai. Exorcists tend to help fallen angels rather than fight them as a rule. That would mean that fallen angels had few natural enemies. Angels showed up so seldom in the human world that one would think they had been exterminated. Angels use the church and the exorcists to fight their battles, and exorcists often ally themselves with fallen angels. That leaves only devils, yokai, and heroes, and those three types of enemies weren't worth mentioning in Kokabeel's perspective. You can go, Kokabeel said. The exorcist stood and bowed once before turning and disappearing. I should change my plans a bit. I was hoping to lure out the moderate faction and lure out Wilbert by killing Mio Gremory, but it looks like Wilbert won't show up in the human world. He just sent the succubus, and that succubus is secretly working for Zolgir. Maybe I should look towards Kuo. That's where the sisters of Sirzex and Serafal live, after all, thought Kokabeel. Freed, said Kokabeel. An exorcist came into the cathedral and knelt in front of Kokabeel. Yes, Kokabeel-sama? Go to Kuo and kill some devils, Kokabeel said. Freed got a big grin on his mouth. As you wish, Kokabeel-sama. You are too kind. I'll happily wipe out those damn devil, Freed said. Naruto and Mio walked through the mall momentarily contemplating where to eat. They had already made all the purchases. Mio had all purchases stored through magic in an intermediate dimension. Why don't we eat there? Mio asked. She pointed to a restaurant and Naruto looked at the restaurant in question. Very gladly. Then let's go inside, Naruto said. They both sat down at a table and shortly afterwards a waitress came. Welcome to High Five, the best noodle soup restaurant in all of Tokyo. What can I do to help you today? Asked the waitress. I'll have a double portion of miso noodle soup, Naruto said. He didn't even need to look at the menu because had been here a few times and what's more, he knew every noodle soup dish. Had been surprised when Mio suggested this restaurant. He wouldn't have thought Mio was a lover of noodle soup. His love for noodle soup was probably the only thing that hadn't changed, even in this world, besides his attitude to keep every promise. I'll take the same, Mio said with a smile. She herself didn't love noodle soup as much as Naruto might, but it was a dish you could eat every now and then. She only picked this restaurant so she could somehow thank Naruto. Whenever she saw Naruto eating at school, he always had noodle soup with him and ate it. She figured she could make him happy with this restaurant and she could see right away that she was succeeding. He looked very happy with the restaurant and by the looks of it he was well known around here. This only confirmed her suspicion that Naruto really liked eating noodle soup. Just how the waitress came to the table and ignored other guests, Naruto and the waitress seemed to know each other. Very gladly, the food will be brought to you shortly, said the waitress. She glanced at Naruto once. Would you like some more sake today, Naruto? The waitress asked. Her cheeks were slightly red. Mio's eyes twitched briefly as the waitress was obviously flirting with Naruto. Not today, but thanks Mayumi, Naruto said. Naruto's face was the same as ever and that calmed Mio a bit. He didn't seem interested in this Mayumi. His face was blank as usual. Mayumi bowed once and then went to the other tables. You've been here before? Mio asked with a smile Naruto would always recognize. Women always have this smile when they were angry or didn't like something. Why is she mad now? Thought Naruto. He nodded yes. I used to come here on weekends when I wasn't busy. The noodle soup is good here and the prices are right too, Naruto said. Not for other reasons? Mio asked. No, Naruto said. He sighed once as Mio's smile returned to normal. Whatever was seems to have passed. At least she's not mad anymore. Although Naruto was much stronger than Mio and could easily kill her, he was wary of her. No matter how strong you were, it's better to avoid an angry woman. Naruto really didn't know how he always managed that. He just couldn't ignore women like that either. Shikamaru had the exact same ability. Naruto and Shikamaru were always surrounded by women who had strong tempers, be it Tsunade, Sakura, Ino or Tamari. All of them had strong tempers, and when these women got angry, it was better to run away. "I'll show you the rest of the house later," Naruto said. Mio didn't know the basement and 2 other rooms on the upper floor. Upstairs she had only seen her room and Naruto's room. She was already familiar with the ground floor, but she hadn't seen the basement either. "Okay. I am excited to see what surprises you have in store," said Mio. What do you mean?" Naruto asked. He really didn't know what Mio meant at that second. He hadn't surprised her with anything, had he? He tried to understand this statement but could not. Mio shook her head once and smiled. "Oh, nothing. Everything is fine," Mio said. She had gotten to know so much about Naruto in a short time than in the last 6 months. She was excited to find out more about the man who had saved her life more than once. Naruto raised an eyebrow and gave her a sideways look. He shrugged and pulled out a red book from somewhere and opened it. Mio looked at the red book and was just wondering how he would take the book with him. She was sure that he had left this book in the house on the small table in front of the couch. On top of that, she had no idea what this book was about. The book was completely red with no writing. There wasn't even a picture on the cover. You couldn't tell what the book was about just by looking at it. "Naruto?" Mio asked. Naruto looked away from the book and met Mio's pink eyes. "What's up?" Naruto asked. "What are you actually reading there?" Mio asked, interested. Naruto lifted the book slightly and pointed his finger at it. "Oh, that here? It's a book about shinobi from ancient Japan," Naruto said. He put the book on the table and turned it to face Mio. Mio saw that one page was full of text. The other side of the book had a picture of a shinobi dressed in all black. "You mean ninja?" Mio asked while looking at Naruto again. This look was more suited to a ninja rather than a shinobi. She also heard shinobi now for the first time. "Shinobi is another name for ninja," Naruto said. He took the book back and looked at the drawing of the shinobi, ninja. The ninja of that time had several names, but shinobi and ninja are the most common, Naruto said. He had been recommended this book by Chisato so he wouldn't waste his time completely. He was a bit interested in what ninja were like at that time. Chisato had written this book herself and that's why it was the only copy. This book really described exactly how the shinobi lived back then and what special abilities they had. They were just normal people, but they were said to be able to do supernatural things. From Chisato he knew that these were really just normal people, but the shinobi had extremely hard training and with their special training they could run for long periods, fight long distances and do other things that were almost impossible for normal fighters in ancient Japan. For example, samurai began training at age 8 and shinobi began training at age 4, just those 4 years before the samurai made a big difference. "Oh, I understand. Are you interested in the history of ancient Japan?" Mio asked. "You could say so. I've read a lot of books about ancient Japan," Naruto said. Just because the architecture from ancient Japan was a bit similar to the architecture of some houses in his old homeland, he wanted to know more about it. "I see," Mio said. Right after that the food was brought and they both started to eat. Naruto had already made the book disappear to wherever. While both were eating, Naruto kept looking at the entrance of the restaurant. He could feel it. The aura of the being that appeared in Tokyo some time ago. The being was in the mall, and it just seemed to be looking around. "I hope that person doesn't find us, otherwise, my real identity could come out and I really don't feel like it," thought Naruto. He just enjoyed his food and casually chatted with Mio about this and that. The person in question was in a store that mainly sold sweets. The person was a petite girl with white hair and gold eyes. The front of her hair had 2 long bangs going past her shoulders and several loose bangs hanging over her forehead, while the back had a short bob cut. She also wore a black cat-shaped hair clip on both sides of her hair. She wore a school uniform from another school. It was clear that she wasn't from Tokyo. The uniform consisted of a white long-sleeved, button-down shirt with vertical linings, a black ribbon on the collar, a black shoulder cape and matching button-down corset, and a magenta skirt with white accents. Well, this person didn't wear a black shoulder cape. She looked around and took some sweets and bought them. She had a blank expression almost like Naruto and she walked out of the store with a small bag full of candy. She continued walking through the mall, memorizing everything with her golden eyes. Bucha was right. In Tokyo there are hardly any devils or other supernatural beings, thought the person. So far, she had only been able to spot 3 devils and a few fallen angels. Of course, there were also churches here, but even in those there were no exorcists. Tokyo had always been a contested territory between the supernatural races. Many have tried to claim Tokyo as their property, but so far none of the supernatural races have succeeded. Even the church was not as strongly represented here as in other large cities. Part of the problem was heroes. The hero clan had always been present in the area. Because Tokyo was where many people lived, heroes did not claim territory as their property. They only ever appeared in greater numbers where there were more humans or where there were a large number of supernatural beings. The person should scout Tokyo and then report back. There are rumors that a group of supernatural beings should be here. It doesn't matter whether it's a devil or a fallen angel. Many supernatural beings died at the hands of unknown attackers in the last 2 years. There were never eyewitnesses to the attacks because everyone was always wiped out. But so far, the person hadn't been able to locate a specific group and the person had been in Tokyo for 2 hours. It may have been planned that the peerage would be moved here from their bucha. This would give the devils more influence in the area and more opportunities to discover potential sacred gear users. There were so many people in Tokyo that it should be clear that somewhere around here there would be people with sacred gears. Of course, these people didn't know about it, but that was irrelevant. This conversation had been going on for a year. However, it has never been decided whether their bucha or the other group of devils should move here from the same city. It was now clear that the person and her troop would move here, but before this move could even take place, many factors need to be considered. The first step would be to check which group of supernatural beings were in Tokyo and whether they posed a threat. The person was best at tracking down other supernatural beings, and yet has not been able to locate any specific group. No one was watching her at the moment either. If a group of supernatural beings were really here in Tokyo, they would have been observed long ago. She just passed a restaurant and continued to look around. She stopped suddenly and her eyes widened. She dropped the small bag of candy and looked around. She had only felt it very briefly, but she had felt it, for a brief moment. Someone had watched her, and someone strong at that. She had not been able to make out from where and which being she had observed, but now one thing was certain. Someone was in Tokyo, whether a group of many or of a few. Someone had managed to sneak in and live here under the eyes of all the supernatural beings. She looked straight into the restaurant and couldn't see anyone. There were only people inside. She could not sense an aura from supernatural beings. She picked up the bag of candy and cleaned it a bit from the dirt. My mission is over. I must report to Bucha, thought she person. She turned and walked towards the exit. She didn't see the two people who just went the other way and disappeared into the crowd. Naruto sighed as he felt the girl slowly walk away. She almost saw him when he looked directly at her once. He just radiated some of his power and he wanted to intimidate her. Whether it worked or not didn't matter. It was only important that the girl now disappeared. He could feel the girl disappearing outside the mall. She will have teleported away with magic. Naruto? Mio asked. She looked at him a bit confused because he looked so serious. Naruto's face went blank again and after that he said it's nothing. I just thought I saw something, Naruto said and then the two walked on. Yuki was standing in her apartment, holding a phone to her ear. She heard the doorbell ring and looked out the window. She should have reported back long ago. But something stopped her. She couldn't get those words from Naruto out of her head. It was weird that her classmate had such an effect on her with just a few words. It was as if he had messed up her whole mindset with a few words. It was almost like magic. Your concern? Yuki heard a male voice on the other end of the line. She cleared her throat once and said Yuki no Naka reports back, Yuki said. The voice grew serious. I am listening, said the male voice. Besides the surveillance target Mio Gremory, another creature has appeared that needs to be observed, Yuki said. She didn't know why, but she didn't like it, but it was her duty to tell the village about Naruto. Details. Race unknown. At least strong enough to defeat a fallen angel with 6 wings without sustaining serious injuries. The creature can completely suppress its aura. The creature's name is Naruto Uzumaki. Blonde hair, blue eyes and 6 whisker marks on his face. The creature goes to my class at Hajiragazaka Academy, Yuki said. It was quiet for a moment, and it wasn't until 5 minutes later that another voice sounded, Yuki no Naka. I am listening, Yuki said in a serious voice. She would always recognize that voice. This voice belonged to one of the elder from Hero Village in Japan. There were hero villages all over the world. You will be sent support shortly. It would be too dangerous to keep leaving you alone in Tokyo. We're getting more and more reports that the Kuo devils are interested in Tokyo. It could well be that devils from the new Satan faction will try to invade Tokyo soon. We absolutely must prevent that, said the elder. Of course. Yuki said. She would do everything to ensure that Tokyo remained a neutral territory. I will do everything in my power so that it doesn't come to that, Yuki said. We know that, Yuki no Naka, your reinforcements will arrive in the next 5 days. Hold off until then and when your reinforcements have arrived report back for further orders, said the elder. Of course, elder. Yuki said. Okay, on to the next topic. What's the situation about Mio Gremory? Asked the elder. Yuki was about to say something but stopped short. She was alone, and you did nothing but watch her suffer day after day. She looked at the wall as if in a trance and said nothing. Yuki no Naka. The report about Mio Gremory. Yuki started slightly and blinked a few times. She shook her head briefly. Sorry. Nothing has changed about Mio Gremory. She continues to just pass her time like any other human being. She hasn't shown any signs of endangering people, Mio said. She raised her hand and looked at her. What is wrong with me? Yuki wondered. She was about to report the information that Mio was now staying with Naruto. But Naruto's words came back to her mind. She really didn't know what was wrong with her. Talk no jutsu goes burr. Yuki didn't hear anything for a while, and then the male voice from the beginning could be heard again. Keep quiet until support arrives. Those were the last words Yuki heard before the call ended. Yuki put the phone on the dresser and clenched a fist in her hand. I am a heroine. It is my duty to fight every supernatural race to protect ordinary people, thought Yuki. She remembered the incident when she was almost killed by a devil when she was a little girl, but before he could even kill her, another devil showed up and saved her life. He even brought her back to the hero's village safely and then disappeared again. She would never forget this encounter. She shook her head and walked out of her apartment. She needed fresh air. Her mind was too scattered right now, and fresh air always helped in such matters. After a few minutes she walked through the park and enjoyed the evening sun. She was lost in thought when suddenly someone walked past her. Her yellow eyes could momentarily make out golden hair, and before she knew it, a barrier was created around her. She narrowed her eyes and looked around. All around them people were disappearing except for one person. Her yellow eyes focused on the person who spoke to her today. Naruto's blue eyes met Yuki's yellow ones. Nonaka, Naruto said. He heard a laugh and he first looked sideways with his eyes and then he turned around. Yuki also turned her gaze upwards. In the air flew a devil with an elegant suit and a white mask. Naruto really couldn't believe it. Can't I have my peace for once? Naruto thought, annoyed. He frowned and looked up at the devil who had locked him and Yuki in that barrier. Of course, he knew right away who the devil was. After all, the devil had only annoyed him yesterday in class. He really didn't think that Takagawa would reveal himself like that, and especially to Yuki. The guy had never done anything before, except watch everything from a distance, but it seemed that something had changed, which is why Takagawa has now acted. He was just coming back from Chisato Hasegawa. He had brought her something else, and where he was with her, he had found out a little more about the factions. Mio was at his house putting all her new stuff where she wanted it. Actually, Naruto just wanted to walk home at a comfortable pace in the evening sun, but that didn't work out. Of course, he noticed Yuki directly, but she didn't seem to notice him, so he just tried to ignore her, but of course Takagawa had to show up and put up that damn barrier. Yuki was enveloped in a green light for a moment, so Naruto and Takagawa looked at her for a moment. When the green light disappeared, Yuki was holding a katana and was wearing different clothes. Her battle outfit was tightly wrapped around her slim figure, and it appeared to be the typical attire for female heroes, which consists of a navy blue leotard with a black collar and white skirt and a navy blue cape. All four of her limbs are covered by her spirit armor. She was standing behind Naruto at first, but once she was in her battle armor, she stood next to Naruto, her katana ready. The green aura of the heroes could be seen around her momentarily. Naruto immediately felt that she was getting stronger when she wore the armor. So, it's true, the armor of heroes strengthens the general power and increases the defensive power of the heroes, thought Naruto. Heroes were created by a certain kind of gods. Unlike angels or fallen angels, heroes didn't have holy power. Their power was different and more neutral to holy power and demonic power. This clan of gods that created the heroes were a special group of gods. They were not affiliated with any other god system and only cared about the balance in the world and in the universe. This clan of gods only had 10 members, but each one was stronger than Satan's or the biblical god. A member of this clan of gods was Chisato Hasegawa. Normally a god from this clan of gods would never be on the human world, but she was an exception, but the reasons didn't matter that much right now. This clan was also called the Clan of the 10 Gods. Thousands of years ago, some gods decided to give some humans a small part of their power, and that's how heroes were born. Naruto still didn't know why a member of this clan of gods helped him. All he knew was that he owed her a lot. He would still have a lot to do before he could pay off his debts. Welcome Yuki no Naka and Naruto Uzumaki, Takagawa said. He bowed while still in the air. Naruto just looked at him with a blank expression. Whatever this guy had planned, it couldn't be good. He would rather be at home now and continue reading the book. So, what is this supposed to be? Naruto asked. He looked up at Takagawa and crossed his arms over his chest. Since he had his senjutsu active before all this happened, he didn't have to activate it first. Don't you have anything better to do than bother Nonaka and me, Takagawa? Naruto asked. Yuki's eyes widened when Naruto said the name. She narrowed her eyes and looked up at Takagawa. She really hadn't realized that this guy was a devil and such a strong one at that. He gave off an extremely strong aura. "Oh Naru Kai. Did you have to reveal my identity?" Takagawa asked. His once demonic voice went normal, and his shoulders just slumped. He sighed once and then looked at him. "Are you sure you want me to comment on that?" Naruto asked. "I should have known better. Well, you can use senjutsu," Takagawa said. He slowly sank to the ground and looked straight into Naruto's blue eyes. "But I can't undo what happened." His voice became demonic again and a purple aura appeared around him. The ground shook as he unleashed his power. Naruto narrowed his aura and held up a hand. He held the tiger sign and concentrated on his chakra. The ground beneath his feet cracked and the air started to shimmer. Yuki also concentrated her power, and her green aura became even stronger. The ground started shaking harder and harder until some trees in the park were simply uprooted and some debris slowly floated into the air. Before anyone could make a move, a purple portal appeared next to Takagawa and out of there came a new devil. The devil had a golem-like appearance, and his name was Valga. Takagawa's aura disappeared and he looked to the side. "Valga. What are you doing here?" said Takagawa. Naruto and Yuki also stopped concentrating their powers at the disturbance. "I am supposed to help you monitor the target, but as I can see you've already acted and of course I wanted to join in." Valga grinned and looked at Naruto and Yuki. Naruto looked at Yuki. "What are you going to do now, Nonaka? Are you going to fight every one of us or do we agree that we each take on one of these idiots?" Naruto asked. He would also fight all three if he had to, but he would prefer not to fight Yuki right now. Yuki was only monitoring Mio, so she wasn't a threat to Mio. Only if she wanted to kill Mio or him, then he would fight her. Yuki looked into Naruto's blue eyes. She remained silent, still holding her katana, but not in his direction. She hadn't intended to fight Naruto here in the first place. At least she knew he didn't hurt anyone. Until she got the order, she wouldn't fight Naruto. There was of course the matter of the conversation she had with him. He just couldn't get her out of her head. No matter what she tried, she definitely needed to talk to him again. "I'll take care of the newcomer," Yuki said. She didn't like to admit it, but Takagawa was definitely stronger than herself. She hadn't thought that such a strong devil was even in Tokyo. He really had completely withdrawn from her attention. Takagawa was definitely one of the strongest devils she had encountered so far. She would not survive the fight against him. "As you wish," Naruto said. He looked back at Takagawa and at Valga. They both looked at Naruto and Yuki. "I agree. A good old one-on-one never hurt," Valga said with a grin. He would enjoy crushing Yuki with his power. He looked straight into Yuki's yellow eyes and was already thinking about how exactly he would finish off the heroine. Takagawa stayed silent and just looked at Naruto. Valga and Yuki both disappeared, moving away from Naruto and Takagawa. The wind blew across the landscape and the hair and clothing of both opponents began to move. "Just tell me one thing, Takagawa. What has changed?" Naruto asked. "You know, Naru Kai, I have a big goal and for that I must slowly take action. If I just wait, eventually it will be too late, and I will miss my goal," Takagawa said in a normal voice. "What do you mean by that?" Naruto asked. He would really like to know what the guy meant. He had never implied anything like that before. What did his big goal have to do with Naruto and Yuki? It can't be the annihilation of Yuki or Naruto. Otherwise, Takagawa would have attacked him long ago when he was on his way to his house. The same was true for Yuki. So what was Takagawa trying to achieve here? The aura around Takagawa reappeared and his voice became the same as before, menacing and intimidating. "That is not so important, let's begin," Takagawa said. Naruto sighed, frowning at that. Why did he have to be involved in this whole thing? He just didn't get it. He narrowed his eyes, and he went into a basic stance. He still had no idea what magics or techniques Takagawa was capable of. One thing was certain. He was the strongest opponent Naruto had ever faced. He didn't even know if he would stand a chance against Takagawa in his current condition. He also only knew from senjutsu that Takagawa was a devil. Without senjutsu he wouldn't know. The guy could really suppress his aura completely for normal beings who can't use senjutsu. "I might have to reveal myself. I hope I don't have to do it, but I am limited like this," thought Naruto. They both just stood there while the wind started picking up. The ground began to tremble from the unleashed power of the two. A purple aura pulsed around Takagawa and the air shimmered around Naruto. A lot of dust was kicked up and started swirling around the two. It was as if an arena of dust enveloped the two. Neither of them took their eyes off the other and out of nowhere they both disappeared. Both appeared in the air, and both thrust their arms forward. Naruto concentrated chakra in his fist, countering Takagawa's punch. The pressure of the impact threw both of them backwards. Naruto made a circular motion with his right arm, and immediately after that a ring of golden flames appeared around him. The ring of golden flames started rotating, and immediately after that it shot towards Takagawa. As Takagawa hit the ground, he raised both arms and a wall of purple flames rose up. He thrust both arms forward, causing the wall of purple flames to move toward Naruto, burning everything to ash in the process. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the color of the flames and what they were doing to the ground. His ring of gold flames and the wall of purple flames collided, causing an explosion of gold and purple flames. The ground was torn up a bit and a cloud of black smoke was created. Naruto and Takagawa didn't move, just waited for the black cloud of smoke to dissipate. They both looked at each other and Takagawa started laughing a little. I have to say, Naruto, I had many guesses as to what you really were, but that. There is only one being who can create and control these special flames, said Takagawa. You really are something special. You will be the only male representative of your kind, or am I wrong there? Asked Takagawa. Naruto shrugged. I don't really care, Naruto said. He looked at Takagawa straight away and said, however, the fact that you control the flames, which are the complete opposite of mine, was quite a surprise. So, you control the cursed flames just like the Dragon King Vritra, Naruto said. He had only heard of these flames so far and he would not have thought to see these flames. His own flames are spiritual flames that have the power of purification. These flames have a similar effect as light-based weapons from fallen angels to devils or yokai. In short, they were particularly effective against beings of darkness. The special ability was called Kasha, which only a special type of high-class yokai could master and use. Kasha allowed Naruto to create rings of golden flames and launch them at enemies. He could also focus golden flames around his hand and fire them in a burst of flame. Shall we continue then? Takagawa asked. Naruto just took a basic stance and stood by. Takagawa charged forward and appeared right in front of Naruto. Naruto blocked a punch from Takagawa and then another right hook. Before he could even counter, he had to tilt his head to the side. Damn, that guy is fast, thought Naruto. He had to deflect 2 more punches before he could snap his own fist forward. Takagawa just blocked the fist and immediately countered with a high kick. Naruto had to raise his arm to block the powerful kick. He gritted his teeth as he felt the power behind the kick. If he weren't in Senjutsu, he would have serious injuries. He ducked another attack and performed a deep kick. Takagawa jumped backwards and landed safely on both feet. What's the matter, Naruto? Am I too fast for you? Takagawa asked. Naruto concentrated chakra into his legs and suddenly disappeared. Takagawa narrowed his eyes and went straight into a fighting stance. He looked from right to left and left to right again. He could briefly feel the wind picking up a little next to him, and that was the only indicator he needed. He turned and saw Naruto appear there. Naruto thrust his fist forward and in response, Takagawa raised both arms and crossed them in front of him. Naruto hit the crossed arms squarely and the next moment cracks appeared in the ground. A shock wave was created on impact, and Takagawa flew away from the enormous force of the chakra-enhanced blow. Naruto narrowed his eyes as a purple barrier appeared around Takagawa's body. The barrier around both of his arms had a few cracks, but they regenerated right away. So, the guy can wear a barrier like armor around his whole body. That's a problem, thought Naruto. Takagawa's barrier was strong enough to easily absorb a chakra-enhanced punch. It was such a blow that defeated Victor with one blow. Naruto could see right away how much stronger Takagawa was. He focused on the ground where Takagawa would land. Takagawa corrected his posture in the air and landed safely on both feet. He looked down at his arms and narrowed his eyes. He looked at Naruto, who just stood there and looked at him. That he could create cracks in my barrier with just one punch. You are truly amazing, Naruto, thought Takagawa. His eyes widened as his feet sank into the ground. He looked down and saw the ground turn to mud. He jumped straight away, landing safely on both feet. I have to say, Naruto, your skills are really mean, Takagawa said. Naruto raised an eyebrow and replied, says the person wearing an extremely strong barrier like armor around his body. My punch should have broken your barrier normally and yet it only cracked, Naruto said. Takagawa laughed lightly and then his purple aura reappeared. Shall we continue? Takagawa asked, holding up his arm. A massive metallic sphere appeared above Takagawa with a purple aura around it. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the sight. The size was similar to the size of a Chudama Rasengan. Takagawa thrust his arm forward, causing the massive bullet to shoot towards Naruto. Naruto clapped his hands together and concentrated. The air around him began to shimmer and the ground began to tremble. The tremor grew stronger and after a few seconds cracks appeared in the ground. 2 massive wooden hands came out of the ground trying to catch the massive ball. Naruto's eyes widened as the bullet simply destroyed the 2 massive wooden hands. Shit, thought Naruto. Takagawa watched as his bullet hit the ground and there was a magical explosion as a result. He flew in the air with his two bat-like wings. He crossed his arms over his chest and just watched the spectacle. A pillar of purple magic rose up, destroying everything around it. These orbs, which Takagawa can summon, were only mastered by himself. Many suspected that these orbs were from another dimension. That meant the metal wasn't really metal. These spheres were very robust, and it took a lot to destroy such a sphere, since this orb was encased in magic. Whenever the orb hit something, there was always an explosion of pure magic as a result. Of course, first there would be the physical impact of the sturdy and massive bullet itself, but right after that there would be a magical explosion, causing even more damage to the victim. A massive crater appeared in the ground from the magical explosion and the resulting pillar of purple magic. As the magic pillar slowly disappeared, a plume of black smoke rose, blocking Takagawa's view. He narrowed his eyes as the black cloud of smoke slowly dissipated. He couldn't see Naruto anywhere, but he knew better. Naruto wouldn't die easily from such an attack. Naruto was too strong for that. He was stronger than Naruto of course, but Naruto was still strong enough to survive something like that. He slowly sank to the ground and when he was secure on both feet, both wings disappeared behind his back. The ground trembled only briefly and immediately afterwards several wooden beams shot out of the ground and entwined his legs. Takagawa's eyes widened as Naruto suddenly emerged from the ground with a spinning orb of chakra. Naruto lunged at Takagawa and thrust his arm forward. Takagawa created a small metallic ball over his hand and then thrust his hand forward as well. The rotating chakra sphere and the metallic sphere collided, ripping open the floor. The wooden beams were also destroyed by the massive force. Both techniques rubbed against each other and as they did so, everyone could see purple magic and blue chakra swirling around them. After a few seconds, both techniques triggered each other, and both flew back through the blast. Naruto slid across the floor and slammed his hand into the floor to stop himself. Takagawa just spread his wings and flew into the air. Naruto looked up and his eyes widened as Takagawa's voice suddenly appeared behind him. "You're getting careless, Naruto." Takagawa's fist hit Naruto's back. Naruto grunted in pain as he darted away, leaving 2 rings of air in his wake. He flew through several trees and crashed through a large rock that was in the park. He landed on the floor, momentarily doubled over in pain. "Crap, without Senjutsu I would be dead now," thought Naruto. He got up and looked in the direction of where Takagawa should be. "I have no choice," thought Naruto. If he wasn't completely serious, he really would die here. Takagawa appeared a few meters in front of him and Naruto changed a bit in that moment. His pupils became slit and 2 red cat ears appeared on his head and 2 red cat tails appeared behind Naruto. "So, you're showing your true form now?" Takagawa asked. Of course, he already knew that Naruto was a Nekosho. Only Nekosho can use and control Kasha. The color of the flames varied from user to user. But they all had one thing in common. The spiritual flames of purification can only be used by Nekosho. For example, Nekomata could not use Kasha. Besides Naruto, there were only 2 living Nekosho. There would be Kaneko and her big sister Kuroka. Although Naruto was the only one who was a complete Nekosho and not half a devil, Kaneko and Kuroka were turned into devils with the evil peace system, and thus they were only half Nekosho. Naruto raised a hand and held it to his neck. He moved his head from left to right once and his neck cracked once. Naruto shook his head once and then he looked directly at Takagawa with his cat-like eyes. "Are you finally ready?" Takagawa asked. If Nekosho hid their traits, then their abilities were limited. Whether it was Senjutsu, Yojutsu or Chakra, they couldn't use all their skills at full strength. Naruto didn't say anything and just disappeared in a burst of speed. Takagawa disappeared as well, and both appeared right in front of each other. Both thrust their fists forward and met each other. Both briefly exchanged a few punches before both disappeared and reappeared 15 yards to the left. Naruto made a high kick, and it was blocked by Takagawa. Naruto blocked 2 punches from Takagawa and tried to hit him with an uppercut. Takagawa only tilted his head back slightly and simply countered the blow with a kick. Naruto and Takagawa disappeared again and appeared in midair. Naruto dodged a kick and countered with a punch. Takagawa blocked the punch and went to punch Naruto in the shoulder. Naruto was only just able to deflect the blow and then they both disappeared again. As both continued the melee, there were multiple blasts no matter where the 2 went. Naruto and Takagawa appeared on the ground next and exchanged punches again. Headbutt, punch, knee, elbow, high kick, low kick, right fist, left fist. Each time they both made exactly the same attacks and each time a blast wave was created, and the ground was ripped open more and more. Naruto and Takagawa appeared in the air next. Takagawa blocked Naruto's high kick and countered with an uppercut. This time he hit, snapping Naruto's head towards the sky. He spat up some blood. Takagawa then punched him in the shoulder, then in the chest, and then another in the pit of his stomach. He turned once around his own axis. His foot hit Naruto right in the face, and right after that Naruto flew away. Naruto gasped and grimaced. He gritted his teeth and whirled around in the air. His eyes widened as a massive ball of purple fire flew at him. Naruto created a ring of golden flames around himself and thrust his hand forward. The ring of golden flames flew through the air and hit the fireball of purple flames. Cursed flames and purification flames collided and negated each other in an explosion of purple and gold flames. Naruto landed on the ground and slammed his fist into the ground. Takagawa narrowed his eyes as the ground began to shake. He only caught a glimpse of the ground beginning to glow yellow before suddenly golden pillars of fire shot out of the ground everywhere. Takagawa always disappeared just before a pillar of fire of golden flame rose at his position and destroyed the earth. More and more pillars of golden flame rose up and Takagawa had little room to dodge. Purple flames appeared around both fists, and right after that he disappeared and appeared something in the air. The pillars of fire rose a good 10 meters into the air and Takagawa was about halfway up. Takagawa spun in the air, unleashing multiple whips of purple flame. All the purple fire whips split the pillars of fire and there were always explosions. After a few seconds, Takagawa had negated every pillar of fire. He landed safely on the ruined floor and then looked at Naruto. At least he wanted to look at Naruto. Naruto was nowhere to be seen, and before he could look around, some wooden beams shot out of the ground and completely tied him up. His eyes widened and he immediately tried to free himself. The difference was felt immediately. Ever since Naruto revealed himself, all of his attacks have been stronger. Even his golden spiritual flames had grown stronger. The wooden beams were now stronger and could no longer be broken so easily. Naruto appeared right in front of Takagawa, holding a large rotating sphere of chakra. Takagawa couldn't free himself in time before Naruto could hit him with his technique. Naruto slammed the Odama Rasengan in Takagawa and the purple barrier of Takagawa popped up right away. Naruto gritted his teeth as his technique rubbed against Takagawa's purple barrier. The Odama Rasengan tried to break through the barrier, throwing visible chakra around. The ground beneath the two was even more devastated by the resulting blast. After a few seconds, cracks appeared in the purple barrier. Naruto gritted his teeth and cried out once before the Odama Rasengan burst and he was thrown back by the resulting blast. Naruto spun in the air and landed safely in a crouch. Takagawa was thrown away as well, and the wooden beam was also destroyed. Naruto just couldn't believe it. Even the Odama Rasengan couldn't break that damn barrier. How strong is this barrier? Thought Naruto. Takagawa appeared a few meters in front of Naruto. That was close, Naruto. You almost managed to destroy the barrier, Takagawa said. Naruto frowned. What is your goal, Takagawa? If you wanted to kill me, you could have done it long ago. Even now that I am giving it my all, you're still stronger than me. So, what's your goal? Naruto asked. He didn't like to admit it, but even with his 100%, Takagawa was still stronger than himself. Unfortunately, I can't tell you, Naruto, Takagawa said. His purple aura appeared again and at the same time a white aura appeared around Naruto. Oh ho, so you're using Toki after all. I've been wondering when you use this technique, Takagawa said. Toki was a technique by which the user once again increased all physical abilities. Naruto had already mastered every technique and so far, the normal boost from Senjutsu was enough for all his opponents. That's why he had never used Toki. He was not yet able to control and maintain Toki to 100%. That's why he was usually stronger without Toki. But now he needs the extra boost from Toki, namely, Takagawa's aura became even stronger. Off to round 3. Takagawa said and disappeared in a burst of speed. Naruto disappeared as well and moments later blast waves rippled through the air. You could always see Naruto and Takagawa appearing in front of each other and exchanging punches only to disappear and reappear somewhere else. Naruto dodged 2 punches and hit Takagawa first on the chest, then on the right shoulder, and immediately after that he gave Takagawa an uppercut. The purple barrier protected Takagawa from the damage, but his head still snapped up. Naruto held a Rasengan over his palm and right after that he slammed the Rasengan into Takagawa's barrier. The blast created cracks again and Takagawa darted away. He crashed through countless trees and through a few rocks. Naruto charged forward and when he got to Takagawa, he was standing and ready. Both crashed into each other and then disappeared again immediately. Several pressure waves appeared over the ground. The ground was repeatedly destroyed where the two appeared. Naruto and Takagawa came up several feet from each other and both thrust their fists forward. Naruto unleashed a blast of golden flame and Takagawa unleashed a blast of purple flame. Everything the flames touched was reduced to ashes. The air around the flames shimmered with the intense heat and as both flames met each other a battle for dominance ensued. Both opponents tried to overcome the other and the flames moved back and forth. After a few seconds there was an explosion of gold and purple flames and both opponents were thrown back by the blast. Naruto used his tail and grabbed a branch and swung onto it. It was really unusual to have cat ears and tails at the beginning. When he was thrown into this world, he still had a tiny piece of strength from all the Biju. This energy closely resembled the yoki of the yokai in this world. That means he had a power like that of a monkey yokai, a kyubi, a nekosho, and other creatures. When Chisato found him, she noticed it straight away. Even if she was currently in the human world, she was always careful to keep her balance. When she saw his entire life and decided to heal him, it was clear to her what she would do about it, had he remained a normal human. He would have lost the ability to use chakra. There was a special breed of yokai that was all but extinct. She had taken the chance and turned Naruto into a nekosho while healing. She did this by strengthening the nekosho's yoki and weakening the other yoki in his body. His body then changed, and Naruto became a nekosho. Due to this change, the nekosho had more members again, and with Naruto as a male nekosho, this type of yokai could multiply faster again. This allowed Naruto to continue using chakra. Naruto didn't complain and just accepted it. Because of this change he was still able to use chakra and so he still had a connection to his old life. Of course, it was difficult at first to deal with his new skills, especially with yoki, which he used to use yojutsu. Yojutsu was similar to demon magic, but it was a little different. With yojutsu, Naruto could create various supernatural phenomena such as barriers or illusions. However, he mostly only used yojutsu for barriers or illusions. For example, he used yojutsu to create all the barriers around his house. You could always tell when he was doing yojutsu. He did this with a few movements of his fingers. He always wrote different words in kanji characters in the air to activate the technique. Takagawa appeared a few meters in front of Naruto and looked at him. Naruto dropped from the branch and landed safely in a crouch. As a nekosho, his agility and reflexes were also naturally higher than other races. Naruto stood up and looked straight at Takagawa. He raised his hand and extended a finger. He started moving his finger in straight lines and several kanji characters appeared in the air. Takagawa narrowed his eyes as Naruto suddenly disappeared and several copies of him appeared shortly after. Takagawa raised both arms, and immediately thereafter, numerous small metallic balls appeared in the air around him. Naruto narrowed his eyes at that. All the Naruto attacked Takagawa. Takagawa just stood there and did nothing. All the bullets around him shot in all directions and attacked all the copies of Naruto. The real Naruto watched the entire spectacle, so, he can also use these bullets as projectiles, thought Naruto. All the bullets hit all the replicas of Naruto, but instead of hurting them, the replicas just disappeared. Naruto clapped his hands together and right after that the ground started to shake. He hoped what he was trying to do worked. So far everything was just theory and whether this would work now would show. Takagawa hit another copy and just dissolved it. This yojutsu is really annoying, thought Takagawa. He suddenly felt the entire floor begin to tremble. He narrowed his eyes as all the copies disappeared and the real one was revealed. He stood a few meters from Takagawa and held his hands together. The ground around Naruto ripped open and shortly thereafter, Takagawa could see two glowing eyes shining through the ground. The head of a snake-like wooden dragon was revealed. Naruto was standing right on his head and all around Takagawa he could see parts of the wood dragon's body appearing. How long is this thing? Thought Takagawa. He raised his arm and created a purple magic circle where a beam of purple magic came out. The magic ray hit the body of the wood dragon and Takagawa's eyes widened. The magic ray did not destroy the wood dragon's body but was absorbed. The wood dragon roared once and darted towards Takagawa. Takagawa spread his wings and gave way to the wooden dragon, which disappeared into the ground. I can't maintain this technique for long. Naruto had managed to reconstruct Hashirama's wooden dragon with the same skills. This meant that the dragon could absorb the energies of others and thereby become stronger. Naruto emerged from the air, creating a ring of golden fire around himself. The ring of golden fire shot through the air and flew towards Takagawa. Takagawa dodged the wood dragon again, eyes widening as the ring of golden fire flew at him. He crossed his arms in front of him and right after that the ring of golden fire hit him. His eyes widened as he felt pain despite the barrier. He gritted his teeth and cried out once, making the golden flames vanish. He looked behind him and saw the wood dragon come out of the ground again and attack him. Takagawa again created a massive metallic orb with a purple aura around it and threw it at the wood dragon. The wood dragon slammed into the massive orb, fighting it over dominance. Naruto couldn't sustain the technique any longer, so he made a tiger sign and the entire wood dragon just exploded. The entire floor began to glow briefly before a massive explosion followed. No matter where you were inside the barrier, Everyone could sense, see, feel, and hear the massive explosion. The blast wave swept everything away from where the wood dragon was. It wasn't just the wooden dragon's head that exploded, it was his entire body, which was very long and mostly still in the ground. That's why the explosion was so powerful. After 3 minutes the ground stopped shaking and the situation calmed down a bit. Naruto appeared on still intact ground and gasped heavily. The white aura around him disappeared, and although Senjutsu was slowly filling up his reserves, he was severely weakened. He took a hit from the blast. He couldn't get away fast enough. Damned, thought Naruto. He looked up and could see Takagawa. Takagawa's clothes had many holes and half of his mask was missing. The barrier around him was momentarily regenerating. Even Takagawa couldn't easily survive this massive explosion. His barrier was broken, and he was hit by the blast and took a lot of damage. He had a few visible injuries over his whole body. It would take a while for Senjutsu to replenish his reserves. He could hardly stand due to the last technique. Naruto frowned. Takagawa removed the rest of his mask from his face and then looked at Naruto with a serious expression on his face. I have to say, didn't think you could use such a technique. I've fought a few yokai using Senjutsu before, but your control over nature is truly exceptional. That wood dragon almost killed me, Takagawa said. Naruto just kept panting and didn't say anything. Takagawa and Naruto looked away at the same time as Valga's aura disappeared. It looks like the fight is over there, Takagawa said. Naruto immediately noticed Takagawa's voice returning to normal and then he stood up normally. Naruto forced himself to his feet and looked Takagawa straight in the eyes. Sorry, Naru-kai, Takagawa said. Naruto's eyes widened when Takagawa suddenly appeared behind him and slapped him on the neck with the edge of his hand. Everything went black before Naruto's eyes and shortly after that he passed out. Takagawa caught Naruto and carefully laid him on the ground. He summoned a new mask and wore it. Yuki showed up a minute later and you could see right away that she got some injuries from the fight against Valga. Takagawa. What did you do with Naruto? Yuki asked. Takagawa squatted in front of Naruto's body and tapped Naruto's chest with his fingers. You mean this guy? Takagawa asked. What does it look like? I won the fight, and your friend here lost the fight, Takagawa said again in a deep and menacing voice. Yuki held her katana tighter and gritted her teeth. She could see that Takagawa received some injuries from fighting Naruto, but he was still stronger than her. Takagawa got up and walked around Naruto's body. So, you seem to have defeated Valga. I am impressed, Nonaka, Takagawa said. Around him, his purple aura reappeared, and the ground began to tremble. Yuki swallowed once and then narrowed her eyes. I must beat him somehow. Naruto has already weakened him. I can't let him die here. After all, I owe him one, thought Yuki. Yuki jumped back and slid across the floor. She dodged another air missile that Valga created with a punch and created an arc of green energy in response. It's a miracle that you're still alive, Valga said. What do you mean by that? Very easily. The guy with the blonde hair saved you a year ago. You don't remember that anymore, do you? Maybe it was the poison you inhaled during the night, Valga said thoughtfully. What do you mean? Yuki didn't know what Valga meant. What should have happened a year ago? She had not fought an opponent who used poisons. She remembered everything that had happened in the last year. Valga started laughing. You really seem to have forgotten, Valga said. He raised his hand and pointed a finger at Yuki. You fought a Grim Reaper and caught the breath of death. Normally you should have fallen into an eternal sleep. But this Naruto showed up just in time and chased away the Grim Reaper and then healed you with his senjutsu, Valga said. Yuki's eyes widened as she suddenly had images of a fight she had against a servant of the god Hades. Grim Reapers live in another dimension. Like how devils lived in the underworld, Grim Reapers lived in the afterlife, another dimension where only Grim Reapers and dead people could be. Grim Reapers all carried a scythe and had special abilities. One of those abilities was the breath of death. If living beings inhaled this breath of death, they would fall into an eternal sleep. These people could only be awakened by other beings who have special powers. Naruto only managed to wake up Yuki with the purifying power of his golden flames. Kasha was namely a senjutsu skill, and with it Naruto could not only hurt others, he could also free others from curses with those golden flames. He attacked the curse inside the person with the purifying power of the golden flames. When he lifted Yuki's curse, he transferred some of his life energy from himself to her so that she didn't even notice. She had forgotten the whole incident and being completely fit from Naruto's healing. She hadn't noticed anything unusual the next day either. Takagawa raised both arms, and immediately afterwards, countless small balls appeared around him. Yuki was ready and she had a bit of sweat on her forehead. She looked at Naruto once and saw the cat ears and cat tails. Her eyes widened as she saw what Naruto really was. Naruto is a nekosho, thought Yuki. Takagawa lowered his arms and all the bullets around him disappeared. So, Nonaka, did you remember? Takagawa asked in a normal voice. He took the white mask off his face and looked straight at Yuki. Yuki gasped once when she was no longer crushed by Takagawa's massive aura. She straightened up and looked into Takagawa's eyes. Yeah. How do you know about that? Yuki asked. Let's just say I am good at observing, Takagawa said, and then he looked at Naruto. What do you do now, Nonaka? He looked at Yuki again. Would you do your duty as a heroine and kill Naruto, or would you take him with you and take care of him until he is recovered? Yuki looked at Naruto and stayed silent for a moment. What would she do? She now knew that Naruto was a nekosho, a high-class yokai with special abilities. Would she do her duty as a heroine and kill him so he wouldn't be able to take advantage of normal people in the first place, or? Yuki narrowed his eyes and walked towards Takagawa. Her armor and katana disappeared, revealing her school attire. I'll take him with me, Yuki said. She would never kill Naruto. He saved her life. And what's more, never mind, she would never finish him, she would protect him. Takagawa smiled. That's fine then it all worked out, said Takagawa. Both heard Naruto's voice. That was the reason? Naruto asked. He just woke up, grunting in pain. Naruto. Yuki ran to Naruto and helped him sit up. Naruto looked at Takagawa. You put on this whole spectacle to make Nonaka remember it? Was it really worth it? Naruto asked. It was, Takagawa said. He crouched down in front of Naruto and looked him straight in the eyes. That's how I was able to find out what you are. And Nonaka had remembered the event from back then. The other reasons aren't that important right now. But it's over, Takagawa said. He got up again and turned around. See you at school, Takagawa said. He walked away from the two and snapped his fingers once. The barrier broke and all the devastation caused during the fight just disappeared. How are you? Yuki asked. Naruto looked at Yuki. Takagawa pretty much wrecked me, but I'll survive, Naruto said. He stood up in pain and frowned. Takagawa. What are you up to? Did you really just want Nonaka to stop seeing me as an enemy and obviously caring about me? What are you up to? Thought Naruto. I'll help you to your house, Yuki said. Naruto sighed. Okay. Whatever you want, Naruto said. He had enough for today and didn't care what happened next. He just wanted to go to bed. He had to explain to Mio why he came so late. She must have been waiting. He didn't hope that Mio would see him in Yuki. Otherwise, there would be even more stress today. But one thing became clear to him today. He definitely needed to get stronger. He had lost the fight against Takagawa. He was completely exhausted. And Takagawa was able to walk away as if nothing had happened. He was glad to have built a training room in his basement with strong barriers protecting the walls. He especially needs to improve his control over Toki and over nature. He thought he had mastered Senjutsu completely, but there was still a lot of room for improvement, especially now that he confirmed his theory. He could use Hashirama Senju's techniques with Senjutsu. Just being in control of the one wooden dragon was draining him of all his powers. That means that he needed to train very hard again. Naruto now looked normal again. His cat ears, tails were no longer visible. Naruto? Yuki asked while helping him walk. Naruto had one arm over her shoulder and used it as a support so Naruto could walk somewhat. Yuki supported him. Naruto looked at Yuki out of the corner of his eye. Naruto asked. I wanted to say thank you for back then. You saved me, Yuki said with a smile. No problem, Naruto said. They both kept walking until they were in front of Naruto's house. Yuki let go of Naruto and Naruto walked towards the wooden gate. He opened it and started walking towards the door before he heard his name again. Naruto? Yuki asked. Naruto turned around. What else is there, Nonaka? Naruto asked. See you at school tomorrow? Yuki asked. Yes, I'll be fine by tomorrow, Naruto said. Yuki smiled. Then I wish you a good night, Yuki said. Naruto nodded. I wish you too. See you tomorrow, Naruto said. He went into the house and closed the door behind him. Yuki looked briefly at the door and then turned around. She went toward her apartment, thinking about her fight with Valga. I need to get stronger. If Naruto hadn't been there today and taken over Takagawa, I would be dead now, thought Yuki. So far, she hadn't had any problems, but someone of Takagawa's strength couldn't defeat her right now. Takagawa stood on a power pole and looked at Naruto's house. Sorry Naru-kai, but I had to do something to help. Otherwise, it would have taken forever for the two of you to get closer. After all, you are the key to my great wish, and for that you must also have Nonaka as an ally. I thought Takagawa. He just disappeared after that, leaving nothing behind. Naruto had no idea what he had started since letting Mio live with him, but he would find out soon enough. Naruto closed the door behind him and sighed. He grimaced once as his pain increased briefly. He slowly took off his shoes and walked down the hall. He just wanted to go to bed now and not talk to Mio about what happened today until tomorrow. He would be fit again by tomorrow, but today he didn't want to do anything else. The fight against Takagawa had exhausted him completely. He braced himself against the wall and walked step by step towards the door that led to the other hallway. He would only have to open it, along the corridor to the stairs, up the stairs and then only to his room and then into his room. His eyes slowly grew heavy. He gritted his teeth and just took one step at a time. After 5 more steps the door to the living area opened and Mio could be seen. Mio's eyes widened when she saw Naruto's condition. His school uniform was badly damaged, and he had severe injuries all over his body. He was no longer bleeding, but blood could be seen on his clothing. Naruto. Mio said worried. She rushed to him. Sorry. Naruto's eyes closed and he was about to fall. Mio was with him in time and held his body off the ground. She brought him into the living room and put him on the couch there. Damn. What happened to you, Naruto? Mio asked worried. She held both hands over Naruto's body and concentrated. She wasn't particularly proficient in this magic, but she could use some healing magic. Her hands began to glow green. She got a few drops of sweat on her forehead. She looked at his face and could see straight away that he was in a lot of pain. She looked down at her hands again and continued to concentrate. Right now, it doesn't matter what happened. She really had to concentrate because healing magic was dangerous. If you made a mistake, you would hurt yourself and the other person. Mio gritted her teeth and continued. I must make it, thought Mio. After a few minutes Naruto moved. Mio broke off the magic and looked worriedly at Naruto. Naruto, said Mio. Naruto opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling in confusion. He looked around, trying to find out where he was. He closed one eye briefly as he remembered and felt some more pain. He straightened himself into a sitting position. Thank you, Mio, Naruto said and then he sighed. He sat back and immediately afterwards Mio spoke. What happened? Mio asked. Naruto looked at Mio. Can we talk about this tomorrow? I'd rather sleep now and recover. I don't feel as much pain because of you, but I am still very exhausted, Naruto said. Mio narrowed her eyes and stared at Naruto. He just looked at her with a blank face and wasn't impressed by the expression on her face. She sighed and then looked worried again. Okay, as you want. I'll help you, Mio said. She got up and Naruto didn't say anything. He could come into the room alone by now, but he really didn't have the nerve for more discussions. He was glad that Mio just let him sleep now and that the explanation could wait until tomorrow. He braced himself a little with Mio and together they went upstairs and then into Naruto's room. He laid down. Thank you, Mio. I am sorry about today. I'll explain everything to you in peace tomorrow, Naruto said. He looked into Mio's pink eyes. Everything is good. Rest and get fit again. I am by your side, Mio said. She held Naruto's hand with one hand. Naruto's cheeks flushed slightly as he looked at Mio's hand. He hadn't had that feeling in a long time. That feeling when someone was really worried about you, and you felt a certain warmth because of it. It was pleasant. He smiled slightly and just nodded before closing his eyes. Mio just looked at Naruto and held his hand for a bit longer. He had done it again. She really didn't know what she did to deserve someone like Naruto. After a while she let go of his hand and quietly left the room. A few hours later, Naruto opened his eyes and was confused again. He noticed right away that he wasn't at home. This blanket was not in any room in his house. He looked around and saw a very elegant bedroom. He was currently lying on a king-size bed and had nothing on his upper body. He straightened himself into a sleeping position and noticed right away that he didn't feel any pain anymore. He felt really good. Even with my senjutsu, I don't regenerate that quickly. Who made me fit again? Thought Naruto. The room was dark because it was still the middle of the night. He got up and looked out the window. At the view, he knew exactly where he was. He only knew one person who lived in a skyscraper and had such elegant furniture. He looked at the bedroom door and could hear someone coming into the room. The door opened, illuminating the dark room. The light from the hallway shone into the bedroom and at the same time Chisato Hasegawa walked into the room. Oh, you're awake again. That's very good, Chisato said. Naruto turned to Chisato. What am I doing here, Ms. Hasegawa? Did you heal me? Naruto asked. Yes. I felt that you were very weak, so I took you to my apartment and healed you completely. You should now be completely fit again. I actually wanted to bring you back now, but now that you're awake we can talk for a moment, Chisato said. Chisato walked over to Naruto and held out his clothes. The destroyed clothes were complete again and they looked like new. Naruto took the clothes and bowed once afterwards. Thank you, Naruto said. He put on the white shirt first and then the black blazer. He straightened it out and then went after Chisato. Both went into the large living area and sat down again at the dining table. The only difference this time was that Naruto and Chisato were sitting next to each other. So, what happened? It looks like you had a tough fight, Chisato said. Naruto just nodded and sighed. Yes. Takagawa pretty much wrecked me. I got to know my own limits yesterday, Naruto said. Did the fight had a specific reason? Chisato asked. Naruto looked away and met her green eyes. He frowned when he thought of Takagawa's reasoning. There were several, but he only told me two. I don't know what the guy is planning yet, but I'll find out, Naruto said. What would be the two reasons he gave you? Chisato asked. He wanted to know exactly what I am, and he wanted Nonaka to remember the incident with the Grim Reaper a year ago, Naruto said. He looked ahead. Nonaka had remembered, and for whatever reason her attitude towards me completely changed, Naruto said. Would you also thank the person who helped you? Chisato asked. Naruto looked into Chisato's green eyes. Of course, Naruto said. He fell silent as he realized it. He closed his eyes and just stood up and took 2 steps away from Chisato. Chisato looked at Naruto and said nothing. Naruto bowed deeply once and said, Ms. Hasagawa, thank you for everything. Without you I would never have been able to gain a foothold in this world. I only learned my new skills because of you, and you always supported me, Naruto said. He got up again and saw Chisato standing right in front of him. She raised her arm and placed a hand on his cheek. His blue eyes widened briefly as he sensed something weird. I've already told you. You do not need to thank me. I will stay by your side no matter what may happen. If you get stuck, I'll help you get back on your chosen path, Chisato said. Naruto didn't move and just looked into Chisato's green eyes. Why are you doing all this? I don't get it. In the eyes of a goddess like you I should be scum, and yet you saved me and always helped me. In the near future you will find out, Naruto, Chisato said. He raised both eyebrows when Chisato called him by his first name, not Uzumaki as usual. Just remember that you are not alone. No matter where you are, you will always have someone by your side to support you, Chisato said. She took her hand off his cheek and took a step back. Now go back before Mio Naruse realizes that there is only an illusion in your bed, Chisato said. Naruto looked at her for a moment before nodding and walking towards the door. His shoes were by the door, and when he got to the door, he put them on. He looked at Chisato again because she was standing in front of him. Always remember that from now on you are vulnerable. If certain people find out about your existence, then you will be targeted as well, not just Mio Naruse, Chisato said. I know that. I need to get stronger and fast, Naruto said. Come back in 2 days, Chisato said. Naruto looked at Chisato confused. Why? Naruto asked. You'll see then, Chisato said. Naruto just nodded and opened the door. He walked out the door and closed it behind him. He looked down at himself and narrowed his eyes. What was that feeling when she put her hand on my cheek? It was almost as if, no, that's impossible, thought Naruto. He took one look at the door and after a few seconds he disappeared in a burst of speed. Naruto put down the phone. He had probably told Yuki that he would come to school today, but that wasn't so important now. It was more important to discuss everything that happened yesterday with Mio. He had just woken up and called the school directly. He was currently only wearing his black boxers. He took a change of clothes and left the room. He walked down the hall, and just as he passed the door of Mio's room, she opened the door. Naruto stopped and looked at Mio. Morning, Naruto said. He then looked ahead again and continued towards the stairs. Morning, Mio said. Her cheeks flushed as she realized how Naruto was walking through the house. She took 3 quick steps out of the room. Hey. Don't walk around the house almost naked, you. Mio's voice trailed off when she saw Naruto's torso. Naruto had several scars on his upper body, which were always well hidden by his school uniform. She looked at all the scars and then looked Naruto straight in the eyes. Naruto stopped when Mio said something. How was that? Naruto asked. Mio had stammered a bit because she was still bright red at the moment from the sight. He didn't understand what she had said. Huh. Mio blushed a little again and shook her head. It was nothing. Mio said with a slight laugh, which was definitely not meant to cover up anything. Okay. Come into the living room in 30 minutes and I'll tell you everything that happened yesterday, Naruto said. He then went down the stairs and disappeared from Mio's line of sight. Mio recovered and went back to her room. She had a hunch that she wouldn't be going to school again today. Normally the two would have to leave in 5 minutes, but that won't happen. She didn't really care about school at the moment either. She wanted to know what happened yesterday and who Naruto fought. From the looks of him, Naruto had lost, and that would mean that there was someone around who was stronger than Naruto. That would not be good. She would have just about a chance right now against a fallen angel with 2 wings, and against the person Naruto fought she would lose right away. Naruto got into the shower and sighed with relief. He was completely healed by Chisato. However, after a day like yesterday, the warm water was still the best. He looked down at himself and he held a hand in front of his stomach. What was that? Thought Naruto. It was similar to back then and yet different. Something had happened to his body, but he didn't know exactly what. Chisato had nothing to do with it. He knew that it was more like something had awakened in his body. He took his hand away and shook his head. He didn't think about it now and just enjoyed the warm water. After 20 minutes, Naruto got out of the shower and dried off. His muscles twitched, and just as he finished, he narrowed his eyes and looked over his shoulder. He was currently standing with his back to the window, and although he didn't have his senjutsu active, he could feel it. Someone was watching him, and not from far away. Naruto got dressed and was now wearing orange shorts and a white tank top. He walked out of the bathroom activating his senjutsu. Huh? Thought Naruto. He stopped in the hallway, confused. He couldn't feel anything outside the house. He couldn't sense anyone around, and the only people in the house were Naruto and Mio. Did I just imagine it? He went into the living area, where Mio was already sitting on the couch. Naruto went to Mio and sat on the couch. He sat back and sighed once. Quite a lot happened, thought Naruto. Naruto? Mio asked. Naruto looked at Mio and leaned forward again. Well, in order to explain this properly I have to start with something else, Naruto said. He got up and looked at Mio. She gave him a confused look before getting startled. Naruto got both of his red cat ears, tails. You should know that only yokai can use senjutsu or chakra, Naruto said. Mio nodded and looked at Naruto's cat ears. They twitched slightly every now and then and curled up a bit before straightening out again. She didn't know why, but the whisker marks on his face made those ears a perfect match for Naruto. I am a nekosho, a high-class yokai. My kind is the strongest kind of cat yokai. There are only 3 living specimens of my kind. There are only 2 others besides me, Naruto said. Why is that? Mio asked. She didn't yet know everything about all types of yokai and their stories. Rather, she had memorized all the information about devils, angels, and fallen angels. I can't tell you myself, Naruto said. His feline features disappeared again and then he sat down again. I have now shown and revealed this to you because it played an important role in why I fought someone yesterday, Naruto said. Should it come out that I exist, many will be after me. I am the last pure nekosho that still exists. The other 2 became devils with the evil peace system. The other 2 are also women. This means these 2 could only get a certain number of their kind. In addition, the children of the 2 would not be 100% nekosho. These children would always be partly a devil and therefore impure. Over time, the genes possessed by the offspring would become weaker and weaker, and eventually my breed would die out completely. However, I could generate many nekosho at once because I am a man. I hope you get what I mean, Naruto said. Mio blushed slightly and just nodded. She got it right away. Many would be after Naruto's genes. He could create a lot of nekosho at once, and thus one could create a personal army of nekosho which would be loyal. She got angry at the thought. She didn't even know why. But the thought of Naruto fathering children with many women just made her angry. But before she could really think about it, Naruto continued. My opponent wanted to find out what I was. When I hide my characteristics as a nekosho like I do now, my powers are limited. Only when I reveal my characteristics can I fight with full force. I didn't have a choice because my opponent was stronger than me, Naruto said. Next there would be an experience from a year ago, Naruto said. Mio looked at Naruto a bit confused. A year ago, I was on my way home, as usual. But that day I felt something strange. It didn't feel good. I had sensed many auras from all sorts of beings with my senjutsu, but I had never sensed the aura of this being before. Mio didn't have a good feeling about this story. She wasn't sure why, but it sent chills down her spine. When I got to the place where I felt the aura, I could see a Grim Reaper. Normally, these beings are only in the human world to collect souls that had died, but this Grim Reaper had a fight with a heroine and cursed her with one of his techniques, Naruto said. I have a special type of flame that even deals heavy damage to Grim Reapers. The Grim Reaper disappeared after a short fight, and I saved the heroine afterwards. I first had to remove the curse from her body and then I healed her. The heroine couldn't remember this event anymore, Naruto said. Mio was now slightly confused. She understood what had happened a year ago, but what did this experience have to do with Naruto's fight against his opponent? What did this event have to do with the fight? Mio asked. The heroine from a year ago was also involved in yesterday's fight. My opponent wanted this heroine to remember the experience again. While I was fighting my opponent, the heroine had been fighting someone else and, in this fight, she remembered it again, Naruto said. Who was the heroine? Mio asked. Naruto took a deep breath and prayed he wouldn't regret it. Yuki no Naka, Naruto said. What? Asked Mio. Yuki is a heroine. Naruto nodded. Yes, my opponent was Takagawa. He is an extremely strong devil. I am not weak, no question. But this guy is on another level, Naruto said. He told Mio the rest, especially the ending. Mio seemed a bit irritated but also concerned. When Naruto finished, he sighed. He had definitely accomplished both of his goals that he had revealed. He now knows I am a Nekosho and Yuki doesn't see me as a threat anymore, Naruto said. Mio didn't like the detail where Yuki was so caring for Naruto. Of course, Naruto had Yuki to thank for coming to the house, but Mio still didn't like it. She didn't want Yuki to get that close to Naruto. That's all that happened yesterday so far, Naruto said. He looked at the floor and seemed thoughtful. Okay. I understand everything so far, Mio said. What should we do about Takagawa? I do not know yet. I have no idea what this guy is up to, and that's why I am worried. Right now, I wouldn't be strong enough to protect you. That means I must train a lot, Naruto said. He narrowed his eyes when suddenly Takagawa appeared with someone else right in front of the house. He could feel it perfectly with his senjutsu. He got up straight away and started walking. Naruto? Mio asked a bit concerned. She got up and quickly followed him. She didn't know what was going on with him. Naruto opened the front door and just looked into Takagawa's purple eyes. What are you doing here, Takagawa? Why did you bring the succubus? Naruto asked. Mio looked at Takagawa and then at the girl next to him. Maria stood next to Takagawa and said nothing. It was like she was a little afraid of something or nervous. She looked closely at Maria. Though she said she didn't care about her family, she still wanted to see her half-sister. Whether she really was her half-sister or not didn't matter. She simply wanted to see Maria. You know Naruto, I wanted to talk to you during the break today about the result of the fight, but you stayed at home and that's why I had to come straight here, unfortunately, Takagawa said. Naruto crossed his arms across his chest. You've already achieved everything you wanted. What is it though? Naruto asked. Takagawa stood next to Naruto and put an arm around his shoulders. You know Naruto, I haven't achieved all of my goals yet, Takagawa said. However, this is not so important. I'd like to offer you a little deal, Takagawa said. Naruto narrowed his eyes and looked at Takagawa out of the corner of his eye. Just say it, right now. I can't defeat you, Naruto said a little annoyed. He didn't think Takagawa would make another move so quickly. He pointed at Maria with his other arm that wasn't around Naruto's shoulder. If you take Maria in with you for a while, I'll keep your little secret for now, Takagawa said. Why should I do that? I am not stupid, Takagawa. I know Maria is serving someone else. I don't know exactly who else she serves besides Wilbert, but that's beside the point. It would be extremely stupid of me to let her into my house, Naruto said. Takagawa laughed lightly. It all depends on the point of view, Takagawa said. He turned slightly with Naruto so they could both see Mio. If you take Maria in, Mio could meet her half-sister, Takagawa said. Are you saying that Maria is really my half-sister? Mio asked. Takagawa looked at Mio and smiled. Naturally, Maria hadn't lied in this case and never would. For her, her family is everything, Takagawa said. He looked at Maria. That's right, isn't it? Takagawa asked. Maria nodded quickly, looking nervous. Yes. I would do anything for my family, Maria said. Naruto looked at Maria and looked her straight in the eyes. Maria swallowed once and got a little sweat on her forehead. Naruto looked at Takagawa after a few seconds. Takagawa turned slightly away from Mio and Maria with Naruto and whispered, You don't want me to hurt Mio here either, do you? After all, you want to protect her, Naruto. He then whispered something else in Naruto's ear, causing his eyes to widen briefly before narrowing his eyes. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Takagawa. Are you threatening me? Naruto asked. Takagawa took his arm from Naruto's shoulder and stood next to Maria again. Oh Naruto, only you can say that. So, what are you saying? Will you host Maria for a while? You don't want any more enemies, do you? Mio walked up to Naruto and touched his arm. Naruto looked at Mio in surprise. Mio? Naruto asked. It's only for a while, isn't it? Mio said, plus, we're always watching Maria and she can't do anything. Naruto just looked at Mio and then sighed. He looked at Takagawa. All right, Takagawa, I'll play your little game for a while, but be warned. If Maria tries even a little thing, I'll kill her outright. Whether you tell my secret to others or not, I don't care, Naruto said. Of course, Naruto, it may not seem like it, but I like you and only have your best interests in mind, Takagawa said. He looked at Maria. All right then, see you, Maria, Takagawa said. Maria just nodded and didn't say anything while Takagawa disappeared into a purple portal. This is not normal teleportation magic. He appears to rip a dimensional rift open in order to teleport, thought Naruto. He watched the purple portal close and then Mio and Naruto looked at Maria. Maria really didn't know what to say. Just come in, Naruto said. He turned and went back into the house. Mio followed Naruto and just left Maria standing outside. Maria hesitated briefly and wanted to follow before she saw the garden. She looked at Naruto's garden in surprise. The garden looked beautiful and there were several bushes with real berries. When you were outside the wooden gate you could not see this garden even though you were directly above the house. This was due to all the barriers Naruto had put up. She went after Naruto and Mio and closed the front door behind her. When Maria walked into the main living area, Naruto and Mio were in the kitchen. She honestly didn't know what to do now. She hadn't even believed that this plan would work and that she would be able to get into his house. Naruto put on hot water to make some tea. His face was blank, and he was thinking. The situation had changed a lot and he would have to be even more careful from now on, especially with Maria because no matter what Takagawa said, he was an enemy of Naruto and Maria was his accomplice. Mio, can you take care of the tea? I'll talk to Maria, Naruto said. Mio nodded. I'll do it, Mio said. Naruto went to Maria and said let's sit on the couch, Naruto said. Maria just nodded and sat down on the couch with Naruto. So, is it true that the devil holds your mother captive? Naruto asked. His gaze wasn't like it was straight or when the two of them first met, he was normal and not that threatening. Her eyes widened when she heard this information from Naruto. How do you know about that? Maria asked. Who asked me to take you in? Naruto asked. Maria understood straight away and thought of Takagawa. Is that what he meant when he told me everything would be fine? Thought Maria. Why yes, my mother is being held hostage and so I must take orders from someone I really don't want to serve, said Maria. What's that someone's name? Naruto asked. Why do you want to know that? If you know that I am actually your enemy, why are you asking all this? Want you kill me? Maria asked. Naruto remained silent for a moment and briefly got a serious look. Don't get me wrong, Maria. Maria swallowed hard when she saw that look again. I would kill you without hesitation, but I would also be willing to help you if you tell me everything about that someone and if you get orders, then you will tell me everything you should do and why. If you're willing, I would be willing to help you, Naruto said. Maria just nodded once and then Naruto's gaze went back to normal. So, who's holding your mother hostage? Naruto asked. Maria sat up straight. The devil's name is Zolgear. Zolgear is a member of the Demon Lord Faction Council. He liked Wilbert Gremory's powers and when he heard about Mio-sama, he had tried to get her, but something went wrong, and he didn't get Mio-sama. He wants to take the power that Mio-sama inherited from Wilbert-sama and transfer it to himself so that he would have even more power. He was going to be the new leader of the Demon Lord Faction, Maria said. How strong is he? Naruto asked. He's very strong. He masters many magics, with which he can manipulate others. He is a master with a sword and in unarmed combat. He can also cast magic with his eyes, which allows him to cast illusions, and he can make himself invisible, said Maria. So similar to the Uchiha. Zolgear can trap the opponent in illusions with just eye contact. It's annoying, but that's not a problem. That's why I have my senjutsu, which is why I don't even need to see him, Naruto thought. Is he stronger than Takagawa? Naruto asked. Maria thought about it and then said, I don't know. I've never seen the full impact of the powers of both. All I know is that both are extremely strong devils, said Maria. I wouldn't be surprised if Lars had a chance against Zolgear, Maria said. So, Takagawa's real name is Lars, thought Naruto. If it's true, and Takagawa was as strong as Zolgear, then Naruto would need to get stronger before taking any steps to deal with Zolgear. He would soon have to take on the Hero clan, but the bigger threat right now was Zolgear. He definitely wanted Mio and so far, the Hero clan only watched Mio and otherwise they did nothing. Naruto stood up and put a hand to Maria's head. Maria reflexively closed her eyes, expecting something like a punch, but not the comfortable feeling of a large and protective hand on her small head. Maria opened her eyes, a little confused, and looked up. Naruto had his hand on Maria's head and was looking at her with a small smile. If you stick to everything I just told you, then together we'll save your mother, Naruto said. He didn't know yet if that was true or if it was all just a lie, but somewhere he believed Maria. Those eyes and her body language told him she was telling the truth. Her behavior showed it to him too. She just reacted too innocently to her succubus status. Normally she would have to be seductive and not nervous when in front of others, especially the male sex. Maria just nodded with a visible tear in her left eye. She smiled slightly and felt a warmth spread inside her when someone protected her. The last time she had this feeling was when her mother held her in her arms. She had missed this feeling and now she felt it again. She wiped away the single tear and Naruto took his hand away. Good. Now that that's settled, we should clarify the situation with the rooms. You're lucky I still have a room, Naruto said. he was already walking to the door and Maria got up and followed him. Mio, I'll show Maria the house for a moment. Do you want to come along? Then you can also see the other rooms directly. I wanted to show you that today anyway, Naruto said. Mio looked at Naruto and at Maria. She had previously observed everything from afar what the two had done. Naruto seemed to have decided to help Maria. If Maria's look was to be believed, Naruto had the exact same look he had given her the day he promised to protect her. The pleasant warmth that she had felt so often in his surroundings was just pouring out again. I am coming, Mio said with a smile. She had just felt something in her chest tighten again when Naruto put his hand on Maria's head and looked at her the way he had that particular day. She really didn't know what it was, but she just didn't like that feeling. She felt uncomfortable and her eyes twitched slightly. She followed the two of them and looked at Naruto's back. What is that? Mio wondered. She had never felt like this in her life. Here's the bathroom, Naruto said. He pointed to the door of the bathroom and then he showed Maria the other rooms on the ground floor before going up the stairs with her and Mio. He first showed her his room and Mio's room before opening a new door. This is my study room, Naruto said. When he opened the door, he revealed a classic study room. A desk with a chair in front of it and a PC on it. A lamp with keyboard and mouse were still on the desk and some books, which were next to the PC. On the right wall was a cupboard with several books and comical scrolls inside, and on the other side of the room was the window to the back of the house. The study room itself was nothing special, and so all three went to the last room, which Mio hadn't seen either. This will be your room, Naruto said. Naruto opened the door and went inside. The room was just like his own, with a carpet on the floor, a single bed, a wardrobe and a desk with a lamp on it and a chair in front of it. The window went to the back of the house, just like the window from the study. I am assuming you used magic to transport your things? Naruto asked. Yes, I have, Maria said. She held both her arms out in front of her, and after that 2 blue magic circles appeared on the floor where 2 suitcases appeared over them. Good, you can unpack as soon as I've shown you both the basement, Naruto said. He went back down with the 2 and then stood in front of an inconspicuous wall. Naruto. Where is the door to the basement? Mio asked. She had just noticed. They had already seen all the rooms on the ground floor, and she couldn't remember a door to the basement. Naruto pressed a certain spot on the wall and then they both heard something move and then the wall moved to the side. This house originally had no basement. I built the basement myself and so nobody could find it so easily. I disguised the door as a normal wall, Naruto said. He descended the revealed staircase, turning on the light as he went. Both girls followed him and were amazed at how the walls looked down on here. The walls looked like the walls of a temple. Even the lights shone like in a temple. It was weird and mysterious at the same time. When all three reached the end of the stairs, both of their eyes widened. They were beginning to wonder why it was taking them so long to get to the end of the stairs. The revealed space was just huge. This could also be the main hall in one of the massive temples in Kyoto for the sheer size. This down here is my training hall, which I use to train. The walls, floor and ceiling are all covered with special barriers to keep them from taking damage. That means you can also practice some magic here that would normally demolish the room, Naruto said. The floor was completely covered with the typical mats found in Japanese temples. On one side of the hall were many dummies for hand-to-hand combat training. When they both looked to the other side, they couldn't believe their eyes. What? Mio simply asked. Naruto smiled slightly and looked at a specific corner of the room he had also created. The corner is perfect for meditating and improving your focus, Naruto said. Out of nowhere in the farthest corner of the massive room was a small garden with a small pond and a stone pedestal where 2 to 3 people can sit on it to meditate. After a few minutes Naruto was back on the couch and the entrance to the basement was locked again. He was reading the book about the shinobi of ancient Japan again with some music playing in the background. He was just trying to relax a bit right now. Far too much had happened for his liking, but it had happened. Mio was on the other couch reading one of Naruto's books from his study. Maria was currently in her room unpacking all her things. Wouldn't it be better to abandon this endeavor, Sirzex-sama? Sirzex looked at a report he was getting. Sirzex was a handsome man who seemed to be in his early 20s. He had shoulder-length crimson hair and blue eyes. This man was the current leader of the new Satan faction and the leader of the Gremory clan. He was also the most powerful devil currently in the new Satan faction. There were a few who rivaled him, but despite this he was the strongest of the new Satan faction. Something's going on in Tokyo and I'd like to know who exactly has taken up residence there. It must be someone special if the person or persons could evade the eyes of all other beings, Sirzex said. He looked at his beautiful wife. What do you mean, Grafia-chan? Should we visit my dear sister again? It would be a good opportunity to see if Rias would really be up for the task, said Sirzex. That's entirely your decision, Sirzex-sama. But bear in mind that Ria-sama could face great danger. After all, there are reports of increased activity from the hero clan in Tokyo. It might not be best if we let Ria-sama and her peerage move to Tokyo, Graphia said in her serious voice. Graphia was a beautiful young woman appearing to be in her early 20s with back-length silver hair that features a long braid on each side with small blue bows at the ends, while the rest was let down, which ends in twin braids and red eyes. She wore a blue and white French-made outfit with long sleeves and a white-made headband over her head with red lipstick as a cosmetic accessory. That's true, but it was Ria's wish. I want to at least try to make my little sister's wish come true, Sirzek said and stood up. He walked over to Graphia and placed a hand on Graphia's cheek. I hope you can understand this, Sirzek said. He kissed her once on her soft lips and then he walked off. Graphia followed her master and husband. She had a slight smile on her lips after the kiss, but quickly became serious again. Sirzek-sama, please stop doing this while we both work, Graphia said. Sirzek smiled at his wife. Sorry, Graphia-chan. I was a little longing for your lips, Sirzek said. Graphia said nothing to that and just followed Sirzek. She was known as the strongest queen in the underworld, said to be even on the level of a Satan. Not many devils were on the level of a real Satan. One thing was clear to her. Sirzek would do anything for his little sister. He hadn't been able to help her with her big problems so far, because as the leader of the Gremory clan and the leader of the new Satan faction, he himself was not allowed to interfere in the affairs of two adult clans, especially not when his father was involved. What? Naruto asked. Maria had just told him what her first order was, as agreed, and when he heard the order, Naruto thought he had misheard. You're supposed to do what? Naruto asked. I am supposed to get you and Mio-sama to enter into a master-servant pact. You should be the master and Mio-sama the servant. I should seal this pact with succubus magic so Mio-sama would become more sensitive, Maria said. Okay. Let's start again. What is this master-servant pact and what does it do? Naruto asked. Mio was in the living room right now and Naruto and Maria were in the study right now. He didn't want this conversation in front of Mio because he wanted to get the full facts first. He had expected a lot, but nothing like this. He had never heard of this magic, though he might remember Chisato mentioning such magic once, but she didn't elaborate. This magic was created a long time ago. It is magic that connects two souls. One soul is the master, and the other soul is the servant. This magic is to ensure that the servant does not betray the master. If the servant refuses to do something to its master, or if the servant has cunning thoughts from its master, a curse is activated. What curse? Naruto didn't like that explanation at all. If we used succubus magic for that, she would get into a very aroused state, Maria said. She would get so aroused that she couldn't control herself. Only you as her master could satisfy her sexual desire again. If someone else did this, the servant would die. Mio would also die if no one satisfied that craving. I was supposed to do this so that Mio's body would be more receptive to other people's touch. The more times the curse would be activated, the more receptive her body would become and more sensitive, said Maria. However, there is also another reason why the Master-Servant Pact is used by many devils, especially devils in the Demon Lord faction, Maria said. What is that reason? Naruto asked. The more often the servant would submit to the master, the more the trust of both would be strengthened and also the fighting power of both, said Maria. What do you mean subdue? Naruto asked. You would have to bring Mio-sama to her climax more than once and please her sexually, Maria said. Naruto just looked at Maria and groaned in desperation. What should he do now, please? He had expected a lot, but nothing like this. If Maria didn't succeed and Naruto and Mio didn't make this pact, then eventually Maria's mother would simply be killed by Zolgir. He actually didn't want to be bound to someone with special magic, especially not if he was forced to always be sexually active with Mio just because a curse was active. He would never deny that he felt anything for Mio. It was she who pulled him out of his cold world and put him back on a path. He also had one or the other dream where he had done certain things with her, but he wanted to deepen this naturally and not through some magic and curse. What are we doing? Maria asked a little nervously. She had already expected such a reaction and had little hope that Naruto would even agree to this. Tomorrow was the full moon and that would mean Naruto and Mio would have to make a decision by then. Only when there was a full moon this magic could be cast in the human world and connect two souls with each other. I need to talk to Mio about it first and think about it myself, Naruto said. He just couldn't believe what he had gotten himself into. He walked out of the room with Maria and went down the stairs. Naruto walked into the living room and put a hand over his forehead. He still couldn't believe what he had just heard from Maria. Why did it have to be like this? Why not something like weaken the barriers around the house? He just didn't get it. Naruto? Mio asked confused. Did something happen? She got up from the couch as Naruto walked into the room and she saw him staring. He seemed completely horrified, or rather in disbelief. Naruto sighed and took his hand off his forehead. I just found out from Maria what her first order was, Naruto said. Mio narrowed her eyes. What's the first order? Mio asked. Let's sit down please. That might be a bit hard to digest, Naruto said. Mio didn't feel good about Naruto saying that. They both sat on the couch and Mio waited for what Naruto would tell her now. She had to be honest, she was a little nervous. She could think of many things and none of them were good. Do you know the Master-Servant Pact? Naruto asked. Mio shook her head. No, I've never heard of this pact. Is this some kind of ritual between two people from ancient Japan? Mio asked. Oh Mio, if only it were like that. I wish this naive view was the truth, thought Naruto. Okay listen. I am going to explain everything to you now and what this Master-Servant Pact has to do with the First Order, Naruto said. 15 minutes later, a loud voice was heard throughout the house. What? I should make a Master-Servant Pact with you. Naruto closed one eye and leaned slightly away from Mio. He would have expected such a reaction, so it didn't surprise him one bit. Calm down Mio. I know exactly what that would mean and I am just as enthusiastic as you are, Naruto said. He frowned and looked at the floor and closed his eyes. He didn't know what to do. Mio sat down again and tried to calm down a bit. Her cheeks were flushed bright red from the explanation, and no matter how hard she tried to suppress it, she did for a moment, imagined herself and Naruto being active in some way. There was nothing she could do but look away. The situation would embarrass her even more. She glanced at Naruto and saw him sitting there. He was leaning forward with his eyes closed and both hands on his head. Naruto thought about how he could somehow clarify the situation. How could one get out of this situation without entering into the Master-Servant Pact? He wasn't thrilled about it himself, but if Mio had agreed, he would have been willing too. But since Mio would definitely not make this pact based on her reaction, he would have to find another solution. It's really exasperating. So far, I've always been able to sort everything out straight away and now for the first time I have a situation that I couldn't handle on my own because Mio was also involved in it. And Naruto? Mio asked a little embarrassed. Naruto opened his eyes and took both hands off his head. He looked at her. What is it, Mio? Naruto asked. What do you think of that? Mio asked with red cheeks. What do I think of that? Naruto asked, slightly perplexed. Mio just nodded and looked straight into Naruto's blue eyes. Why do you want to know that? It's already decided. You don't want the pact and that's why we have to find another solution, Naruto said. Say it, said Mio. Huh, come on, tell me. Would you want to make the pact? Mio yelled, cheeks bright red. She looked away after that and crossed her arms under her breasts, emphasizing them a little more. Naruto leaned away slightly when Mio suddenly started screaming. Why is she screaming now? She had already said that she didn't want it and I just said that I don't think it's good. Naruto was a little sweaty on his forehead and he seemed a little nervous at her reaction. He sat down normally and cleared his throat once before telling her his opinion again. I don't know why you want to know, but here you have the answer, Naruto said in a serious voice. Mio looked at Naruto out of the corner of his eye and waited for his answer. It sucks and I'd rather not make that deal with you Mio, said Mio. Mio looked away again and closed his eyes. As I thought, before Mio could think any further, Naruto carefully placed a hand on her shoulder. She opened her eyes in surprise and looked straight into Naruto's blue eyes. His gaze was just so serious, and those deep blue eyes were like magnets for her. She couldn't tear her pink eyes away from his blue ones. If we both entered into this pact, then what has been between us so far would no longer develop naturally. I don't know what you think about it, but I know that you did something to me. Mio, there's something between us and so far, the connection has developed naturally. Nobody had interfered and slowly but surely, we were becoming more and more familiar with each other. I don't want that bond to be destroyed. You are the person who pulled me out of my cold world and gave me a reason to live again. I just don't want anything to change between us because of this pact. I couldn't bear to lose you. I've lost a lot before, and I couldn't stand to lose everything again, Naruto said and, in the end, he took his hand off her shoulder and looked at the floor. He had his eyes closed and stood up. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I better go now, Naruto said. He was about to walk away until he felt two hands on his arm. He opened both eyes in surprise and looked at Mio. His eyes widened when Mio had tears on his face. She smiled at him relieved. Please don't go. I would be willing to make the pact as long as it was with you, Mio said. Her heart was pounding and her dark thoughts from just now were all gone. She couldn't help but weep easily with joy. She had always thought that she was nothing special to Naruto. He had always given her so much and she hadn't been able to reciprocate one bit. Whatever she had been thinking up until now was just being washed away by his words. He had given her what she had wanted to know all along. She hadn't imagined that her heart was beating harder and harder around him. Even before she was saved by Naruto, it all started much earlier, when she would always talk to him during breaks and eat with him. What? Naruto asked. You want to make the pact? Do you know what this means? If you did just one wrong thing, the curse would activate, Naruto said. Mio just nodded and Naruto sat back down on the couch slowly while Mio still held his arm. She just didn't want to let him go. Otherwise Mio would be afraid to wake up from a nice dream. They both just looked at each other and said nothing. Both were bright red in the face at the moment and just stared at each other. Naruto and Mio slowly started to get closer to each other while their eyes never left each other's. Both were startled when suddenly the bell rang. Naruto and Mio widened their eyes and moved away from each other again. Naruto quickly stood up. Please go to Maria and let her know we're going to make the deal. I'll go to the door, Naruto said. Mio just nodded and looked at the floor with bright red cheeks. She waited for Naruto to leave and didn't get up yet. She couldn't believe what she had just done. She held both hands to her cheeks and suddenly had to breathe faster because her heart was pounding so hard. But at the same time, she couldn't help but smile and look towards the door where Naruto had disappeared. She remembered every word he had spoken. Her entire body was flooded with an unknown warmth that felt so good. Naruto stood in the hallway for a moment and shook his head once. He suppressed the emotion he had just felt and somehow managed to get back to normal. He went to the door and opened it. Hello, young man. I didn't want to bother you. I just wanted to introduce myself, a man said. You're not disturbing, don't worry, Naruto said. That's fine then. I moved in next door today and just wanted to say hello to the neighbors, said the man. Nice to meet you, Naruto said. He held out his hand and the man smiled and took the hand. Naruto felt immediately that the man had a strong handshake. Jin Tojo, nice to meet you, Jin said. Naruto nodded. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said. Both of them let go of each other's hands and at the same time Jin looked at the garden, which as usual was full of life with many different flowers, bushes with berries and even small ponds here and there, had even seen a few cherry trees at the back of the garden, which lined many sides of the road. Did you set up the garden like this? Jin asked interested. Yes, you could call it my hobby, Naruto said. I can only say that the garden turned out well. I've really never seen a garden like yours and you can't even see it from the street because of the wall, Jin said. That's correct. Alright. Then I want to say hello to the other neighbors. It was a pleasure, Naruto Uzumaki, Jin said. Same here, have a nice day, Naruto said. Jin went after that and disappeared around the corner. Naruto narrowed his eyes when Jin went out of sight. He closed the door and activated his senjutsu. As I thought Naruto, he had already felt it slightly. Even though he wasn't even using senjutsu, Jin was a hero, and an extremely strong one at that. In terms of pure aura, he was even stronger than Takagawa. He thought he had heard the name somewhere before. He walked down the hall, trying to remember where had heard that name before. He stopped and his eyes widened. Naturally. Jin Tojo, the strongest hero of all time. He is said to have defeated the Dragon King Fafnir and then absorbed some of his power. No one knew what happened to the Dragon King except Jin Tojo himself, thought Naruto. So, it was no wonder why he sensed another aura in addition to the aura of a hero. That must have been the aura of a dragon that Jin Tojo got by defeating Fafnir. Okay. I have to start training today, thought Naruto. Now the mightiest hero of all times lived right next to him and although Jin didn't look threatening, he could attack Naruto at any time. He would definitely have to be careful. He walked up the stairs because he sensed where Mio was at the moment. She was in her room with Maria at the moment. He knocked on Mio's door and shortly after, the door of Mio's room opened and revealed Maria. I just found out from Mio-sama, Maria said. She bowed to Naruto. Thank you both for making this pact. It is only because of you that my mother will be able to live, and we have one more chance to free her, Maria said. Thank you. Mio, it was she who finally changed my mind, Naruto said. Maria already knew. After all, she had overheard the conversation with some magic. She didn't want to spy, but she was dying to know what the two would decide on. I just wanted to let you know that I am going down to the basement to train. Do you both want to come with me? Naruto asked. Maria and Mio smiled and nodded. Naruto took them down to the basement and began an intense training session that he hadn't had in a long time. It was clear that he would have to train a lot to get strong enough. Mio learned more about magic from Maria and how to use it better. In the process, the two got to know each other better. Naruto could see it from afar as he did his strength training. He smiled slightly at the sight of the two training together, laughing as he did so. Maybe it wasn't a mistake to let Maria into the house after all, if only because of Mio. She seems to want to get to know Maria better. Even if she said otherwise, her laugh near her is proof enough, thought Naruto. He then concentrated again and pushed his body up again. Since it wasn't even afternoon, Naruto could still really work out today and get his body really sweating again. It was a liberating feeling to train again. He hadn't even realized how had missed a good workout. This also gave him memories of all his training sessions, where he was out with Jiraiya or where he trained the Rasen Shuriken or the training with Killer Bee. The next morning, Naruto woke up and stretched once. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and then got up. He opened the balcony door and went out onto the balcony. The sun was just beginning to rise, but that didn't bother Naruto. He didn't know exactly what was going on with him today. He felt good, better than usual. It was as if the sunrise suddenly triggered something in him again and not like usual, where he just watched disinterestedly without feeling anything. Something was constantly changing with Naruto over the past few days, and he only knew one thing. He didn't think this change was bad. He leaned against the railing and smiled unconsciously as he watched the sun rise. He first held a cigarette in his hand and then just looked at her. He shrugged and just flicked the cigarette off the balcony and snapped his fingers once. The cigarette was briefly consumed by golden flames before simply turning to ash and being carried away by the wind. Naruto stretched one last time. You could see his entire upper body twitching. He was currently only wearing pants, so everyone could see his torso. He looked again at the sunrise and then went inside. He put on his school uniform and then went to his desk. He opened a drawer and looked inside. He didn't move for a moment while he just looked in the drawer. He reached into the drawer and took out a necklace with a green crystal there. He looked at the necklace and his eyes widened as the necklace began to glow. He braced himself for the usual pain, but it didn't come. Naruto looked at the necklace and didn't move. He suddenly had this necklace around his neck again when he appeared in this world. Usually, this necklace was destroyed where Naruto fought pain, but for whatever reason, he had worn this chain around his neck. But there was just one problem so far. Whenever he wanted to wear the necklace, he felt an extremely strong pain. It was as if the chain didn't accept him and repelled him. He tilted his head slightly and hung her around his neck. The glow of the necklace increased once as it hung around Naruto's neck, and he had let go of the necklace. Naruto's body began to throb, and he felt as if something weird happened in his body. He no longer felt anything of the world around him. He only felt the pulsing of his body. He could hear and feel every single heartbeat in his ears. His eyes widened and he started panting. Everything around him went black. Although he still had his eyes open, he didn't lose consciousness and yet he couldn't see anything. It was as if someone was interfering with his perception of the outside world, but Naruto could sense something else. Something was tugging at his consciousness, wanting to move him somewhere. Naruto couldn't do anything and just let that feeling guide him. Out of nowhere an extremely bright light appeared in front of Naruto and because of that he had to close his eyes and put his hands in front of his eyes. The pulsing in his body had stopped at the same time as he saw that bright light. He opened his eyes slightly and blinked a few times. He was momentarily looking at the floor and when he saw the floor he was confused. He was currently standing in a meadow. He recognized that directly. He took his hands away from his face and looked around. This is, Naruto thought to himself. He was currently standing in a large meadow area with many small flowers on it. In the distance was a forest with huge trees at least 40 meters tall. One could also see a massive lake a little further south and further north were many high mountains with snow-capped peaks. Where am I? Naruto wondered. He looked at the ground when suddenly the ground started to tremble. It felt like a massive creature was moving somewhere. He instinctively looked at the forest and narrowed his eyes. He didn't know what it was, but something was calling him. He focused chakra into his legs and pushed himself forward. His eyes widened as he resurfaced much farther than he intended. He looked down and saw his fingers. His fingernails were much longer and more like claws. He took his cell phone out of his pocket and held the screen up in front of his face. His whisker marks were more feral looking, and his blue eyes were blood red. He just had exactly the same eyes as Kurama's. He didn't understand anything anymore. What was going on here? Even when he revealed his Nekosho characteristics, he may have had a black slit and no normal pupil, but his eyes remained blue. His teeth also seemed sharper. It was almost like Kurama were talking through Naruto right now. This is exactly what Naruto looked like right now. The red eyes, whisker marks became like Kurama's, his canine teeth became longer, and his fingers more closely resembled claws. Kurama, thought Naruto. He looked down at himself and thought about the feeling he had felt with Chisato in the apartment. He thought he had just imagined it, but he thought he felt Kurama's chakra very briefly, but that was impossible. After all, he had been in his subconscious so many times and there wasn't anyone. Neither Shukaku, Matabi, Isobu, Son Goku, Kakuo, Seiken, Chomei, Gyuki or Kurama. None were left and the entire chakra was gone from everyone as well. But why did he look like this? He put the phone away again and looked at the forest. He narrowed his eyes and stormed off again. Something was driving him, whatever it was. Something was calling him, and although Naruto didn't know what it was and that something could also be dangerous, he absolutely had to go there. Each step closer to the forest caused a surge of tension throughout his body. The hair on the back of his neck stood up and his entire body began to throb with each additional step. When he got into the forest, he felt the ground shaking again. He paused for a moment, concentrating on the tremor and where it was coming from. He suddenly opened his eyes and jumped onto one of the branches of the huge trees. He sensed something in the distance. A massively powerful and sinister aura emanated from the depths of the forest. Naruto's eyes widened as he felt that aura. Tears welled up in his eyes as he got closer and closer to the creature. The closer he got to the being, the harder his heart began to beat. He would recognize that aura again and again. Even if he wouldn't see this creature for over 1,000 years, he would recognize this aura again and again. He landed on a massive branch and saw the creature. It lay down there, majestic as ever with its red fur and 9 tails behind its body. The being was as big as a dragon, if not bigger. The being was momentarily lying on the forest floor and appeared to be asleep. The creature's massive head rested on both paws, which more closely resembled human hands. Its red fur swayed back and forth in the light breeze that blew through the forest. Kurama. Naruto's entire body shook when he saw him. He could barely stand when his legs became weak. Naruto's voice was carried on the wind to the ears of the massive Kyuubi. The ears twitched slightly and then the eyes of the Kyuubi opened. 2 large blood-red eyes were revealed with black slits. The Kyuubi's head rose, and he looked up at the branch where Naruto was currently standing. Naruto's red eyes and Kyuubi's red eyes met. Neither of them said anything before the Kyuubi opened its mouth and its voice rang out. "It took a really long time for you to show up, partner," Kurama said before starting to grin. Naruto jumped off the branch and landed right in front of Kurama's head. Naruto slowly walked towards Kurama and when he was standing right in front of him, Kurama bowed his head and Naruto touched his snout with his hand. "Kurama, it really is you," Naruto said. He couldn't take it anymore and hugged Kurama's muzzle and started crying uncontrollably. Kurama just rested his head on both of his paws and closed his eyes while grinning. Naruto clutched Kurama's muzzle and just cried. All this time he had wished to meet someone from his old homeland. All this time he craved someone's voice. He had wished so many times that he could talk to Kurama again, or to someone else. He just didn't care. He hadn't felt anything in this new world for so long, where he had nobody but Chisato Hasegawa in the beginning. Over time, he found a new person in Mio, which allowed him to start feeling and appreciating things in life again. The sunrise alone was the best example of this. So far, he didn't feel anything, but now he felt something through Mio again. She had managed to get him out of his cold world again. He began to feel things again that he hadn't felt before. Without Mio he would still be the same as before, but all that time before her, had longed so badly for someone he knew. All his repressed emotions, which he had buried deep in his soul because he couldn't handle losing everything and everyone, were now coming to the surface. His entire body trembled, but his hands gripped Kurama's fur. He was very afraid that this was all just a dream and that he would wake up any minute. He didn't want to wake up if this were a dream. He could also smell the scent of Kurama, which he knew best. After some time, Naruto calmed down and slowly let go of Kurama. He took a few steps back so Kurama could look at him with both eyes. Kurama opened both eyes and looked at Naruto. "Why? How?" Naruto asked. "You think I'll just leave you alone like that?" "I would never leave my partner alone no matter where you go," Kurama said. "But, I've been in the seal so many times and you weren't there anymore. Where have you been all this time?" Naruto asked. "I was sealed in the chain by the goddess who found you," Kurama said. Naruto's eyes widened at this information. "You were about to die and we Biju had no strength left to heal you. But before it was too late, the goddess appeared and started healing you. She had appeared in your seal and explained to us everything she could do so that you could continue to use your chakra. In this world there were yokai who had a power similar to us Biju and that's why it was possible to make you a yokai because you combined the powers of several into one. But you could only become one kind, of course, I wanted you to become a Kyuubi. But the goddess informed us that I would not be able to stay by your side then. It was clear that each of us would dissolve here, we didn't belong in this world. But the goddess had made us a proposal, she could seal one of us into a sacred gear, which would then keep us in this world. It was immediately clear that I would continue to be by your side. I wasn't thrilled about it, but in the end, we decided that you would become a Nekosho, so the goddess had used the power of Matabi to make you a Nekosho. I was sealed in the necklace so that someday I could be by your side again, Kurama explained. Why didn't you get in touch? I tried wearing the necklace several times, but she always refused me, Naruto said. It was because the chain rejected you. This chain only accepts living beings, and the chain had always perceived you as something else. You had lost all your feelings and no longer had what was needed to live. A heart, your heart was no longer active, and you were just a doll. You had to find a reason why you wanted to live at all. In the meantime, you seem to have found something again because you can feel something again. So, the chain perceived you as a living being and brought you here. So, just because I locked my heart off so I couldn't feel this pain anymore, did I only make things worse? If I had never closed my heart, would you have been right by my side? Naruto asked in disbelief. That's the short form. Seriously, what happened to you? You never gave up and kept fighting. No matter what happened, you even managed to free me from my unbridled hatred. You've made the impossible possible so many times and all of a sudden you just gave up. I didn't know what to do anymore. Naruto said, no matter what happened, I always had someone by my side. Even when I was little, I already had Tuchi and Ayame. I knew I had someone. No matter what happened, I just had someone by my side. But in this world, I suddenly had no one. I just couldn't. What's with this face? Now you see me again and the first thing you do is cry around here, Kurama said with a grin. Hey. I just poured my heart out, you fucking furball. Naruto yelled while pointing a finger at Kurama. How was that, you ungrateful person? I am the mighty Kurama, the strongest Biju ever. Naruto crossed his arms across his chest and looked sideways in sorrow. Yeah sure. Strongest Biju my ass. Had let us weak humans control him more than once, Naruto said. Say that again. Kurama straightened up and pointed a finger at Naruto. Dare to say that again and I'll just crush you with one finger. Naruto also pointed his finger at Kurama. Try it. I'll defeat just like the time I get your chakra, Naruto yelled. Both remained silent and just looked at each other with narrowed eyes. After a few seconds they both started laughing. When they both stopped laughing, they both looked at each other with a smile. It's good to have you back with me, Kurama, Naruto said with a visible tear in his eye. Kurama grinned a little wider. Good to be by your side again, brat. Half an hour later Naruto was sitting on the floor in front of Kurama. Both of them were just talking about what had happened so far. Kurama had only partially understood what was going on in the world outside of the crystal. Understand. So, you decided to protect this devil and at the same time you fell in love with her, Kurama said. Naruto blushed. Hey. I do not know yet. I admit that I have feelings for her, but I don't know if I really love her already, Naruto said. As you say, so, you can also use Hashirama Senju's Mokuton, yes? Yes, it was just theory so far. But yes, I was able to reproduce the wooden dragon with all its abilities, be it absorbing the energy of others or exploding. I almost died in the explosion, Naruto said. You're just an idiot. What do you expect? Hey. It was my only chance to survive against Takagawa, okay? I just wasn't as strong as the guy. I've lost most of the skills I had in Konoha. I can use chakra here, but it's different from Konoha. I was glad that I could still use chakra physically as usual to get faster and stronger. The only reason I can use the Rasengan here is that the Rasengan was really just raw chakra manipulation. I can't do the Rasen Shuriken or the Shadow Clones anymore, Naruto said. That was expectable. After all, we are in a different world here. Yes, I know that. Ms. Hasagawa informed me about this a long time ago, Naruto said. Once again you have made many enemies without being able to do anything about it. I guess you never change. Should I? Naruto said, you've already changed. You are no longer as naive as you were before you entered this world. Even if you have your feelings again and thus resemble your old self again, you have still lived here for more than 2 years and had your experiences. You've grown up a bit. Naruto didn't say anything and just looked up at the sky. He didn't even know how long he had been here, but he didn't care right now because he felt really good. He finally had Kurama by his side again and from now on everything would get better and he would be able to do anything. What is actually happening to you now? Will you stay in the chain forever or what will happen now? The chain has merged with your body. The chain was a special sacred gear that the goddess had created especially for both of us. She wanted you to find a reason to live before you could use my power again. She was concerned that you might otherwise straighten out of control, and she was right about that. With your broken spirit you could not have controlled my power and you would have died from the power. So, is everything the same as it used to be? You live inside me again and we share our chakra? Naruto asked. Well, it's a bit more complicated than it was then. Sacred gear gives you the abilities that are similar to what they were back in the elemental nations. You know there are different stages in a sacred gear. Yes. There's the normal sacred gear, the balance breaker, and then there was another stage, but I don't remember which one it was. That is enough, the sacred gear's normal abilities, which the goddess created especially for both of us, give you the ability to use and control my red chakra. This means that like in KCM, you can grow extra body parts and move them, similar to the chakra arms you trained with on the island with Killer Bee. You can also concentrate my chakra around your body as usual and thus get a V1 cloak only without the tails. Otherwise, you can just wrap the chakra around certain parts of the body. You know everything else you can do with it. The other ability would be being able to create the mini Bijudama. I see, Naruto said with a slight smile. I guess it's not going to be as easy as it sounds, is it? Naruto asked. Kurama just nodded. Yes, my chakra is different in this world and harder to control. You're going to need some training to use it like it used to be. How about the KCM? That would be your balance breaker. But before you can achieve that, you must first master all other skills and strengthen your normal skills. The balance break is not as easy to obtain as you might think. I'd love to just give you my entire chakra. But things work a little differently in this world. We are no longer in the elemental nations, so different rules apply. If it weren't for the sacred gear, I wouldn't be here either. It is only through the sacred gear that I can stay in this world at all. Understand? Naruto opened his eyes and saw that he was back in his room. He had a smile on his face when he could feel Kurama again. It was a bit different from the elemental nations, but Naruto was able to sense and talk to Kurama again. The necklace that had always turned him away had now become one with Naruto and was no longer visible. He looked at the clock and was a little surprised to realize that only a minute had passed. He must have been with Kurama in the sacred gear for 3 hours. He left his room and walked down the hall. He had a smile on his face the whole time. Naruto was the first to wake up, so he started preparing food. It wasn't long before Mio walked into the living area in her school clothes. She knew right away that something was different. She barely recognized Naruto. He seemed so happy. Normally he always looked so emotionless, except in certain situations. But now you could see how he was smiling, and not just a slight smile like usual. He had a real smile on his lips. She didn't know what had happened, but she knew one thing. She liked that smile. This warmth, which he had previously only partially radiated, he now radiated all the time. It was almost like Naruto was the sun. Morning Naruto. Naruto looked at Mio and smiled at her. Morning, Mio. Did you sleep well? Naruto asked. Mio nodded a bit perplexed and then smiled too. You seem different, said Mio. I feel different, Naruto said. He turned the eggs once in the frying pan and then turned to her. I have to tell you something, Mio. Huh? What's going on? Mio asked. I wanted to say thank you, Mio. I probably said it yesterday, but you're the only reason I can smile again. Thank you for that, Naruto said. Mio blushed. I idiot. Don't just say something like that, Mio said. She looked away and Naruto scratched his cheek with an awkward smile. Sit down. Food will be ready any moment. Maria should come down soon too, Naruto said. I'll help you with the rest, Mio said. Naruto looked at Mio briefly and then nodded. Okay, thank you, Naruto said. Mio smiled and helped him. She really didn't know what had happened, but she likes this change. Seeing Naruto smiling like that just suited him better. Even his blue eyes seemed full of life again. With his golden blonde hair and those blue eyes, you could lose yourself in. The smile just fitted so much better. Good morning, Maria said as she walked into the living area. She blinked a few times when she saw Naruto and Mio. They both smiled while finishing the meal. She just wasn't noticed at all. She couldn't help but think about certain things. Tonight, she will get an interesting show. She already knew a few things that she could use to make the evening even more unforgettable. Oh, morning Maria, Naruto said. He picked up 2 plates of food and walked over to the dining table. Slept well? Naruto asked. Yes, the bed is very comfortable, Maria said. Naruto nodded and sat down at the table. Mio came to the table with another plate and sat down next to Naruto. Everyone started eating and something told Maria that she was lucky to have been persuaded by Takagawa to carry out the order. Otherwise, she wouldn't be here now, and her mother might never see her again. So, she might be able to see her mother again someday. When everyone had eaten, Naruto put the dishes in the dishwasher and then he and Mio went to the front door. Then we'll be on our way. Stay in the house and if something happens contact us with magic, Naruto said. Maria nodded of course. Naruto and Mio then left. Maria closed the door behind her and wondered what to do next. She could already prepare everything for tonight. She grinned a bit and got to work. Naruto and Mio were walking side by side and Mio was smiling the whole time. Naruto just looked up at the sky and just kept walking. He just let his mind wander a bit. At the moment there was no one around who could be his enemy, and so he just enjoyed the presence of Mio and the warm rays of the sun. After 20 minutes they both walked through the corridors of the school. Naruto, should we go up on the roof together during the break? Mio asked. We can do that, it would be my pleasure, Naruto said with a smile. Mio smiled too and nodded. There were hardly any students in the school, and that's why hardly anyone looked at them. Long time no sees, Jin said. He smiled and went into the apartment. It is true, it's been a few years already, Chisato said. You didn't lie about the brat. He was able to awaken his sacred gear now, Jin said. He had been following Naruto and Yuki on their way to class, and he could make out the aura of a sacred gear from Naruto. Even if he can hide his normal aura with senjutsu, he can't easily hide the aura of his sacred gear. He would first have to learn how to properly hide the sacred gear's aura, but for that he would first have to learn how to use his sacred gear. I told you had found purpose again and he was ready now, Chisato said. How are your son and wife? Chisato adjusted her glasses once and looked at Jin. Both are fine. Basara and Sapphire are in the underworld with the moderate faction. Basara fits better into the underworld because after all he became a devil and not a hero like me, Jin said. Jin had met his wife, Sapphire, many years ago. He had fought many battles against the devils of the moderate faction and the Demon Lord faction back when he was still serving the village. He was the strongest hero from a young age, and he was celebrated as a war god among heroes and feared among devils. After many conflicts and some events related to the Dragon King Fafnir, he fell in love with Sapphire and the two got Basara together. It was pure coincidence whether Basara would become a hero or a devil. Had Basara become a hero, he would have grown up in the human world. However, since he was a devil like his mother, he grew up and lived in the moderate faction. They both wanted to come visit me in 2 weeks. Maybe that's how Sapphire could get to know her niece. After all, Mio is now living with Naruto, and if I am not mistaken, the two have a very close relationship. Naruto was the person who rescued Mio Naruse and was the only one who protected her. She in turn was the person who pulled Naruto out of the darkness and gave him a reason to live again, and through that he could meet his old friend again, Chisato said. You're right. I am excited to see what else Naruto will experience in the future. The brat is already strong, even though he hasn't trained in a very long time. Once the brat has fully mastered his abilities and mastered his sacred gear, he's going to be a big deal, Jin said. You're right. He has the potential to be very strong, Chisato said. She looked out the window and thought of the man who never gave up. He might also help you regain your original strength, Jin said. Chisato had limited access to her full power while in the human world. There was a way for her to regain all her strength. I know that, but that's not so important to me anymore. I just care that Naruto is safe and okay, Chisato said. So, it's him, huh? Jin asked. Chisato just said nothing and looked out the window. Just remember that me and Sapphire have your back. No matter what you decide, we both will always stand by your side. After all, we could only get the Basara because of you, Jin said. I know that, Jin, Chisato said with a smile. Hey, Narukai. You don't look like a corpse today, Takagawa said while standing by Naruto. Naruto looked out the window bored, and after a few seconds he looked at Takagawa. Did you say something? Naruto asked. Takagawa held his chest with both hands. Oh, Narukai. That was mean. I know you heard everything, said Takagawa. The teacher came into the classroom at that moment, so Takagawa had to go back to his seat. As Takagawa sat in his seat, he looked at Naruto out of the corner of his eye. You seem to have a will to live after all. As it stands, my plan seems to be working better than I thought. Even better. Then I'll be one step closer to that snake again, and soon I'll be holding the bastard's head in my hands, thought Takagawa. Thanks for watching.